The lady says it's recording. Here we are on The Blind Man in Black. I'm Brian Snyder. Thank you for watching on YouTube and listening on Apple Podcast. If you like the show, please rate, subscribe, and review. Also, if you like my wife and I being completely exhausting and hilarious, go to the Exhausting Snyders on TikTok. And my co-host and wife, Rachel Snyder, is here. She is the co-founder of Odd Salon San Francisco, former editor-in-chief of Atlas Obscura, and she is currently writing a screenplay about her father's band called Searching for Absalom. Rachel, thank you for being here.
For Absalom.
I really fucked it up last time, so I want to make sure.
You're overcorrecting.
Yeah, I'm really Absalom.
Just think Absalami.
Absalami. All right, so this is a very lovely moment. Very lovely moment because our guest today is a skateboarder. He is an author. He is a sales rep for Blood Lizard. and he's also my brother-in-law, Sean Sanford. Thank you for being here.
Yeah, of course. Thank you for having me.
It's an honor. It's an honor and a pleasure. So we're going to talk about a lot of things. And I don't know where we should begin. How have you been holding up through the pandemic?
It's been fine. It's honestly been kind of great in some ways. When the pandemic first began, I was kind of in a time in my life where I was feeling a little bit stagnant and I was ready for a change. And lo and behold, the world changed. So I wasn't forced to change myself. So I just changed with the world, and I've been enjoying the wave ever since.
Well, you're a good place for it too, because you're in San Francisco, and that's been a pretty solid place as far as the pandemic goes about rules and people.
Yeah.
I mean, every time I've gone to the city, and it's like surprising because everyone's wearing masks and everyone steps out of your way. Whereas here they're like, "Oh, what's the matter? You don't want the flu?" and they cough on you, you know. So.
yeah. It's been great in San Francisco. Like, people have been very, very adherent to the medical science. Go figure. No. But yeah, so yeah, it's been good.
Well, before we get deep into this, I want to mention, because we're trying to start a new podcast, my wife and I, your sister, and we're not sure exactly what it's going to be. We're not sure where it's going or what's going to happen, but we're looking for collaborators, and we are trying to put that out into the universe. And I threw out a title this morning, and and you didn't like it, but I feel like you didn't like it, Rachel, because you weren't awake.
No, I still don't like it. I'm awake and I still don't like it.
See, the title was "When Life Gives You Loss, You Make Lawsonade."
I like it.
It sounds like a lozenge commercial. Right?
Yeah, that's true too.
Or you could shorten it to "Making Lawsonade."
Lawsonade sounds like a lozenge. It sounds like medicine. Like
we are medicine. We're hilarious medicine.
I don't like it. I prefer.
It could be construed as.
Sorry. Oh, sorry. Go ahead, Johnny.
I was going to say, it could be construed as like an HIV patient lost their AIDS, lost an AIDS.
Well, that's a very positive spin on it. I'm a fan of what was it? Bry Trying.
Bry Trying.
Or Live and Let Bry.
Live and Let Bry. Yeah.
I like that.
See, I don't want it to be Brian centric, though. I really don't.
It's not going to be. Just because the title is Brian centric doesn't make the podcast Brian centric.
I know. I feel like that, though. I feel self-conscious.
Okay, we'll get over it.
All right. Well, enough about me. But anyway, so everybody, this podcast would just keep an ear out or an eye out. We're trying to pull our shit together, and The Blind Man in Black will end at its 100th episode, and just be aware of that and look out for us.
Life sucks, then you bry.
Oh, that's a good one.
What was it?
Life sucks and then you bry.
Okay, that's not bad.
I like that.
I like it better than lozenge.
I like lozenge.
I like loss of AIDS myself.
All right, Sean, back to you. So where did you begin?
Where did I began? Let's see. I began in the mists, the fog, the very showers that fall from the sky of the Sierra foothills, Grass Valley, California, on a ranch that I believe is haunted, probably still haunted. I think it was when I was a kid.
By
Haunted by
who?
good spirits, haunted by, I don't know. See, my earliest, I don't know if I ever told you about this, Rach, but my very earliest memory is of being, I don't know if I was old enough to talk yet. It might have been in my wah wah phase that I've heard so much about, where everything was wah wah.
Yeah.
But and I remember standing up in my bedroom, standing on my bed, looking out my window at the room that eventually had the sliding glass door on it.
Yeah.
I was in that room, and I'm looking out the window. It's the middle of the night, and I'm having a conversation with somebody. But like I said, I don't even know if I could actually like talk yet, but I'm communicating with something. I don't think of it as a person, because I don't remember it being a person as so much as like an energy. And it was out in that little walkway, where there's the flower bed there that mom probably had done up really nice back then.
So you're facing the
But
barn. You were facing the barn.
no, I'm facing the Pays house
Okay.
in that window right there.
Gotcha.
And I was just like talking, and I remember multiple nights just standing on my bed or staying in my crib or whatever it was, just like looking out the window talking to something. And I never knew what that was. Like I said, it's one of my earliest memories, but there's multiple, and I wasn't scared, but I was definitely like communicating with something that wasn't, it's not like some like homeless dude out there or whatever, but it was like a thing.
It was
I
probably
feel.
Rachel trying to go out, and then she pretended to be a ghost.
No, I was too young for that crap at that point.
Okay.
But you know what, Sean? I was just talking the other day, like last week, about, because Nika's been having nightmares, and I was telling him that I used to have nightmares too, and that I had these two very distinctive, very memorable when I was about his age, and it was in that room, and they were weird. Like they were one of them was way too sophisticated for my age, like what it was about. And it was when the Millers had gone to Germany, and I was like bummed because I didn't want them to be gone. And so I went to look for them, but I was in this weird post-apocalyptic, like everything was on fire, and there was like, but it was like upside down baby seats and ripped up dolls. I mean, it was really, really vivid, and I hadn't seen any or anything like that. And I remember thinking like I just didn't understand where I even got all that. But there was like a teacher who had a thing on the board where half the world was all crispy and on fire and the other half was fine, and he was saying that we had to go to this one and get out of this one, and I was like 5.
Wow.
Really weird.
Crazy.
But both of the really weird dreams that I had when I was a kid were in that room.
So wait a minute, did I cut you off, Sean?
No, not at all.
Okay,
so
so
that's pretty much.
I'm not to belittle your experience, but I will. You know, it's interesting. Everybody that has some kind of ghostly thing, it always happens when they're sleeping. That every story I've heard, it's like I was sleeping and then this happened. You know?
Yeah, I've heard ones that weren't when people were sleeping.
I've got some where I wasn't sleeping at the ranch.
Yeah,
where I grew up. There's some weird shit out there. Like I'm telling you.
Well, give us another one.
Okay, so I remember one thing. I hadn't remembered this until I saw my good friend Dave Lyons, who was my closest, dearest friend from 3rd grade through middle school. I still consider him a very good friend, but we hadn't seen each other for years. And it was shortly after, I mean, we hadn't seen each other since high school. And there was one evening when my wife Candace and I went into the mine shaft in Nevada City, and Dave was in there. I was like, oh shit, dude, it's Dave. And so like we're just like, oh my God, like I haven't seen you in probably fucking like 15 or whatever, like however many years. And he started talking, and it was shortly after my dad had passed away. And he asked me what was happening with the ranch. And I told him that my sister and I had lost it because of family disputes between my dad and my aunt and all this shit. And so I was like, the ranch is no longer in our family, long story short. And Dave just said, I remember him saying like, That's crazy because the ranch there was something going on out there. And I was like, what do you mean? And I remember him saying, like, don't you remember all the weird shit we used to see? Because we'd always go running around at night, Dave and I, like just around the storied expanse of the ranch. And I remember one night that he reminded me of that I didn't remember it at all until he brought it up. But one night we were facing the barnyard, and there was a like a wooden fence that was put up to contain the horses that were living in there. One night we were looking out there. We couldn't see much. It was very dark, and it was probably, I'd say, maybe like, I'm bad with foot or yardage. It was probably like the equivalent of a city block away from us, where the fence was, and we could see clearly the fence being reflected off the moonlight, and we saw something it was definitely in the barnyard, and it was moving towards us, and it moved through the fence, like somehow like came towards us, and then it was suddenly on the other side of the fence, blocking off the fence from us. And then it stood there for a second. It didn't have any discernible shape. It wasn't shaped necessarily like a standing human. It was just sort of a mass. And then it moved to our left, and then it went back into the woods. And we both looked at each other like, what the fuck was that? Like, did you see that? Like, what the fuck was that? And we were both tripping on it. And we used to run around in those woods all the time, out behind the barn at night too. Not so much at night as during the day, but he reminded me of that. He was like, that was fucking crazy. And then,
Wow.
and it was never, it was never explained. I mean, I told Robert Stack about it and never made it on Unsolved Mysteries, but yeah, it remains an unsolved mystery to this day. And that was just there's some other weird shit.
So you did submit it to Unsolved Mysteries?
Not really. I should have. I
But
probably had thoughts too.
I'm sorry, but I feel like the universe just does not want what I want. Like I have not had any supernatural experiences in my life ever. Even when I could see, I didn't. I mean, maybe when I was little, I had weird dreams or something like that. I had one dream when I was in high school, and I stayed up really late working on my senior paper, and I saw this face come at me in the darkness, and it was white, and it had pupils were white, and it was grimacing at me, and I woke up screaming. But that's it. But I know I was dreaming. But
yeah,
Rachel, have you had anything?
Yeah, I mean, I've had lots of weird unexplained stuff happen. I don't know if it's ghosts or not, or if I'm just dumb and don't know what it was. I mean, I don't know. But yeah, I mean, you were with me when I had that experience at the river, when we didn't.
Oh, the wind?
When we didn't dump my dad's ashes in the river, because that would be illegal without a permit. Yeah, the wind thing. And I had a lot of weird stuff happen after my dad died, and as a kid too, not at the ranch. In fact, it's interesting to hear that about the ranch, because that's one place that I don't think of anything besides those two weird dreams that I had. But otherwise, I mean, I left the ranch when I was 9 or 10, and I was still pretty deep in my fantasy world. Like, I wasn't really talking to other humans as much yet.
Yeah.
Do you remember her being in her fantasy world, Sean?
I think I was too enraptured in my own. I don't know, or maybe our fantasy worlds
they didn't collide very often. We're kind of doing our own. I mean, I was in unicorns and fairies and leprechauns, and I was very focused on that at that age. And the ranch was full of that for me. Like,
did you ever dress up Sean as a unicorn?
No, I dressed myself up as one, though. I have a picture of one of our Halloween. I have some family photos to share. This one where I made my own Halloween.
Oh yes.
Are you holding it up right now?
I'm holding it up right now, and
please describe it for those on Apple Podcast.
It is Sean and our sister and I don't know what you are, Sean. What are you?
I remember that year. It's so funny. I remember asking my mom what I was going to be for Halloween, because like at that age I was like 4 or whatever. And I remember being like, what am I gonna be for Halloween? And she said, you're going to be a wizard. And I remember thinking, that she said I was going to be a lizard. And so like leading up to Halloween, I was like, dude, I'm gonna be a lizard. This is gonna be so amazing. Like I just pictured myself in this very elaborate lizard costume. Then she was like, no, it was just like a cape.
It's funny. It's funny because you can see the picture. It is literally just a cape, like in your pajamas, it looks like. And then Maria's like, this is a bunny. And her costume's, I think, the most elaborate.
Really
but
cute.
Obviously homemade. And mine, I made my own unicorn horn, and it looks like a dick on top of my head.
It totally does.
It looks like a tin foil. It looks like a dick made out of tin foil.
Yeah,
and then I have my nose blacked out for some. I guess that's a unicorn's. No, that's a unicorn nose. But yeah, I was really happy with this costume, actually. Very proud of that horn. I have a giant dildo on top of my head.
Oh my god,
that's a good one.
I just picture mom being all stoned, taking that picture, being all, she doesn't even know.
She's got a dick on her head. I do that to my kids, so I can't really say anything.
I think all parents do.
But I mean, at the ranch, I was always looking for 4-leaf clover, and I was, the stump in the front yard, all the little pockets inside were little fairy apartments as far as I was concerned. And I was always catching crawdads because I was pretty sure if I caught one and did something right, it would turn into something else. And so there's a lot of magic there for me, but no ghosts, nothing scary. I don't remember ever really being scared much there, except for one night. When I was really young, I must have been like 4 probably. And they were having a party or something. There was people over and they were in the other room whooping it up. And I wanted mom to come in, but I didn't want to get up because I've been told not to get out of bed. So I rolled myself out of bed on purpose. And it was really far down. Like it was really high bed. I didn't think it was going to hurt. Like it totally did. And so I figured I'd roll out of bed and then fake cry. And she'd hear the bang and then come. But it actually hurt. So I real cried. But I remember being like scared to go out. But that's literally the only fear. Well, I got bucked off a horse once, but let's put
a little context on the ranch. So for those listening and watching, the ranch was in Grass Valley, or more accurately, like Rough and Ready, which is a gold mining community during the gold rush. So it has that aura of Old West and genocide. So
Old West and genocide.
So the other thing is,
really
Sean, Rachel was doing some family history research, and she discovered, was it his grandfather that got shot?
No. It was great grandfather.
I meant great grandfather. I'm sorry.
Great. Like, no, I think it was grandpa's grandpa or something.
And
he got shot and just like several times and just kind of
shot in the face once. But it wasn't here. It was in San Francisco. I think it was George Parrish Sanford. I have the article I put for the New York, and it was because he was hiring Chinese to work, and so they think, and so we were talking about this at Thanksgiving. I have to find the story, but very interesting.
You're just gonna leave it at that?
He was lived. Well, I don't have it right in front of me, Brian Snyder. That's fine.
Wasn't he shot and he just kind of shook it off and just kept
he didn't
on
shake
living?
it off. He just lived. He shook it off by living. He was walking in the street and no one saw it happen, but they heard, and they came out and somebody had shot him in the face and taken off, and he survived. And they didn't know why. Nobody knew why, except for that maybe it had to do with his labor choices.
Wow. Which would make sense, because I'm actually, Rach, I really do want to talk to you about what you've been learning about the Sanfords and all that.
Yeah, it's
especially well, and right now I'm at San Francisco State. I'm taking a class on the history of California. Ooh. and I keep looking at all the just what's the history of California, as the name implies, and it's just so fascinating, like how when it was still a part of Mexico, before that a part of Spain, and like, which wasn't really that long ago, like in the whole scheme of things.
No. And your family had a very big part in California history. You have great grandparents that were, big judges, like Supreme Court judges, and on both sides, because Marnie's family was really, Marnie's family tree here is very like Nevada County royalty. The Clemos and the Clows and the Niles were, highfalutin families here. Wow. And so the Sanfords were in Plumas County. So they
when you say Marnie, you mean
I mean his grandmother.
Yeah.
Yeah, our sister Marnie is named after their grandmother.
So just so everybody's wondering why she's referring to her, the grandmother in as Rachel is a half sibling of Marnie and Sean.
Yeah.
Different fathers.
I'm a halvesies. Yeah.
Yeah.
Right.
Different dad, same mom. My mom married their father when I was just 3. I just turned 3. So he was my other dad until I was about 9 or 10. But I grew up on the ranch with them up until that point. So the family history I'm doing for that is theirs. I'm doing my own, but I'm also doing theirs because it's, intertwined and it's a little more interesting than mine, frankly.
So Sean, let's talk about your parents.
Okay.
What was going on in the early days?
I don't know. Honestly,
I could probably tell you more than he could.
I was 2 when they got divorced, or so, or 3, and all I know of my parents' relationship to one another was mostly them talking shit about each other when I was young. Kinda, it wasn't ridiculous, but my other sister and I, Marnie and I, we were pretty much equally divided between our dad's house and our mom's house. And so it was, and so a lot of times, like, my mom would be like, oh yeah, your dad, like, he's an alcoholic, and my dad would and then we go back and be like, Mom says you drink too much. Maybe you should stop drinking so much. And I would say, I'm not an alcoholic, I'm a drunk. Alcoholics go to meetings. He would like love he thought that was just like the funniest joke ever. And so like, and that was as far as that conversation usually
that actually
went.
is a good bit.
Yeah, totally. But and so, and this is coming from,
I should note that his name is Brian, also like mine.
Yeah.
And you called him Beebs?
Yeah, everyone called him Beeb, Bree, B,
Bieber.
Bieber.
I don't understand why. I asked Rachel why she doesn't call me Beebs.
It might be a little bit too Oedipin.
That's a little weird, Brian. Why don't I call you my stepfather's nickname? Why? I wonder why.
It's odd that you won't.
Creepy at all. God, what's the matter with you?
So your parents divorced, Janice and Beebs. And by the way, there's a song that I have to sing because I love hearing it. Don't stay with me, Moni. Don't stay with me, Moni.
Oh yeah, don't tell at me, honey.
Don't tell at me, honey.
That was my quote, I guess, when I was a kid.
There should be piano along with that.
Yeah.
So Beebs composed that.
Beeb, no S on Beebs. There's only one.
Yeah,
Beeb.
just Beeb.
Oh, okay.
And that was a rendition of Every Day's a New Day. Every day's a new day. And I used to go like this, like, apparently, and Dad and I guess be like, and whenever Marnie would look at me, I'd always be like, don't tap me, honey. And so then I'd always be like, don't tap me, honey. And turn into a song.
John,
so what gesture was he making?
His hands going back and forth like all the single ladies, all the single ladies. But Marnie, my younger siblings are only a year and a half apart. They're super close in age. And Marnie, and the best, like, well, they hit each other, but I was too big to hit anybody, so I wasn't a hitter. But one of the main things you could do to each other is stare, or I'm not touching you. I'm not touching you. And those were the 2 torture methods. And so she would stare at Sean had that lisp, and he, don't stare at me, mommy. Staring at me. Stop staring at me. And he wouldn't like understand that if he kept saying that, she'd keep doing it.
So I guess that's what Robin Williams used to do to people. Like, he would just stare at them and make them uncomfortable. And then because he was so hairy, he would have his arms, like, he'd sit next to somebody and just like put his arms up against people in the hair and make him feel real uncomfortable.
I wouldn't like that. That would upset.
I think I would. If Robin Williams did that to me, I'd be like, yes. My friend Dina used to work at one of the skate shops here in San Francisco, FTC. And he said Robin Williams went in there like on the regular, like he went in there a lot, and he'd buy skate shit. He's actually wearing a Think hat in one of the scenes in Mrs. Doubtfire.
Oh, really?
When he's having like the party for their son or their daughter, I forget which, and it's all elaborate, and the mom gets all pissed. Yeah, he's wearing a fake hat in that part. And I remember Dino being like, he probably like wore that hat to set and was like, this is what I'm wearing. A hat that he probably bought FTC.
So was he a skater or was it for his children, you think?
I think he skated. Like, I think he was always, I remember hearing through whatever, just through the skateboarding grapevine, everyone was like, yeah, dude, Robin Williams skates. Like,
Huh.
and I don't know if I don't know if he was just, maybe he skated when he was young, or I don't know what exactly it was, but he was very, very interested and like kind of partially immersed in like skateboarding culture in the early 90s.
Wow, I did not know that.
Yeah.
And he did live in San Francisco.
Mhm.
Or he had a house there.
Yeah.
So let's go back to you and Moni. So so what was it? So you fought a lot? What was that about?
I didn't say fought a lot. I just said that they fought physically because I
Mhm.
mean, I was going to say that we didn't hit each other, but that's not true. I didn't hit them because I was too big. I
I've
tortured
got-
them, but I didn't
yeah.
hit them.
Yeah.
I tortured.
Yeah, you were more like mental torture.
Yeah. Well, it was an unfair, like the size. It was an unfair size advantage. It wasn't fair to physically, you know. But yeah, I do other mean things.
Well, and
But
also,
they
Like the
were the same
Cabbage
size.
Patch thing?
I didn't do that to Sean. Did I? No, I didn't do that to Sean. I only did that to him. You're gonna get me in trouble bringing up.
well, and also, like, keep in mind, Rachel was like, living with Rachel was, I might as well have been living with like fucking, I don't know, like John Cardiel or like a god. You know what I mean? Like Rachel is just
Wow.
A criminal.
Yeah,
I mean,
where I was like, dude, Rachel's so fucking rad. Like she's all immersed in all this crazy like cultural shit. Like she knows about like Rocky Horror Picture Show, and she was always turning me on to all these bands that I still listen to this day, like the Dead Milkmen and like and Misfits, you know, like all that shit, you know, like turning me on to all this cool punk rock and music and movies. And I don't know, it was just rad. Like, so I never, Rachel and I never really fought. And so
He was a criminal god?
you could say
I was
that,
a punk rock guy.
Punk rock god, yeah, very much. Yeah. And not even like around the house. I think you kind of were in Nevada City too. I mean, you left when you were young, but I remember going to Nevada City with you and everyone was like, Rachel, what's up?
It's funny because that turned around. I remember when, you know, when I came to town and I was Sean's sister. Like suddenly I was Sean. Because he started hanging out with all, like, I hung out with older, cool people. And after I left, he started hanging out with those same people. So he like skipped an entire cool generation. Like the people that were older, cool people than me, he was friends with that were like, Sean's awesome. You're Sean's sister. What? And then like people that I tried to hang out with me in high school, they're like, thought I sucked until they found out I was Sean's sister. And they're like, oh, you should have said something, you know? Like, well, you know, he was 11, so he wasn't that cool yet.
Yeah, it was. People just didn't know it.
So what was your childhood like, Sean?
Let's see. Gosh, that's such a, there's a lot to go into there. I was the little brother, so there was that. A lot of times I kind of felt like the invisible boy.
What's that about?
I just, it felt like when I was at my dad's, a lot of times I feel like, gosh, where do I go with this? I like Marnie and I were hanging out a lot and blah blah blah, I guess, but it was usually just kind of me hanging out on my own. I'd always go to the barn and play basketball and stuff like that. And I remember times feeling that, like, I mean, I was always the scapegoat, and that was even talked about like with my family. They even knew it. They were like, yeah, like everything's your fault. What? Like that was just the thing. And it got to a point where it kind of like gave me a couple panic attacky situations where I was like, fuck this, dude. Like every single thing, whenever anything, my dad was the key contributor to this, where if somebody left like the gate open to the barn and the horses could have gotten out, it must have been Sean. Or
why do you think they did that?
Probably just because I was the younger, and I was, you know, I might have been not the most sanitary person in the house, and which is saying a lot at the ranch house, but but I don't know, like, but to be honest, like I have nothing but not nothing, but I have the vast majority of my childhood consists of really great memories with both my older sisters. You know, like they're both really cool to me. As far as like me being the younger brother and all that, like when they were paying attention to me, it was usually like they were being cool to me. You know what I mean? Like, and not to say that I was just like this neglected little shit like in the corner, but you know, like I definitely had the impression growing up that like whatever was going on in my life like didn't really matter that much to the rest of my family, and but I was cool with that. You know what I mean? Like I had my own little things going around, but also and then
What were
there's
some
also
of the little things going around?
I just mean like when I was like
Transformers?
when I was well, yeah, I did love Transform. I did well more Ninja Turtles, like Ninja Turtles. I was obsessed, and then when I got into like when I started learning how to play, my dad was into it when I started learning how to play guitar because he thought that was cool. And I was like trying to be in a punk rock band when I was in 6th grade. Oh my
Wow.
god, yeah, we were called the what was it? Somebody with my
There's
friend
red.
George.
Wait, there's
There was
one
a
red herring.
there was another red herring. That was
Another.
later. That was in high school. Before that, when I was in like 6th or maybe it was 7th grade, I was in a band with Jordan and John Schiller, I think was technically in that band. And we were called like the Texas Whorehound. That's what
Texas
we were called.
Whorehound?
Yeah. Yeah. That was the and I'd forgotten about that band until my friend Jordan, his little sister, because his house had like a few kids running around, which I never really paid much attention to. And then when I got older, there was this girl who was kind of friend, like we had lots of mutual friends around Nevada City, and they hung out in Nevada City around like on Commercial Street and all that. And she just came up to me and she was like, "Oh yeah, are you gonna get Texas Whorehound back together?" I was like, what the fuck? Like, how is this even happening? Like, what? And she was like, yeah, I'm Jordan's little sister. And like, and I kicked it with her a few times, but I was like, what the fuck? Like, this is crazy. And also his one of his little brothers was like, I actually saw him just the other day, or not the other day, but a little while ago. And he's, you know, they're cool. Like, and I'm kind of friends with them now. Like, but back then they were just kind of watching us play our music, if I'd even strive to go that far to call it that. But
Maybe you could reunite Texas Whorehound.
maybe. I don't think we had any real. We had one song that the one song that we recorded. We didn't have any recording equipment. We had but we had borrowed a video camera from my dad's friend Miles Rodney. And so we just set the video camera up in the living room at the ranch and just played this song. And Marnie will still just like kind of make fun of it because she remembers like she saw the tape and she was like, that's so bad. But just went like it was Jordan's bass was really loud. Just went the guitar was just, oh my god, it was just horrible. I don't think it had any lyrics or anything. Like, oh my god.
So I'll give you some lyrics since it's, Texas Whorehound. Let's call it Gonorrhea Mamma Mia.
Oh, I love it. Dude,
there you
that's
go.
A good one.
There's the title of your first song.
Gonorrhea Mamma Mia, Ria Mamma Ria, Ria. Dude, the song's writing itself. Shit.
So what did you want to be? Did you want to be a punk rock star?
I always wanted to be a writer. I've always wanted to be a writer. That's just
where did that come from?
I couldn't tell you. Literally as long as I can remember, as long as I've been able to write, I've wanted to write stories. And that's just always been the case. Always.
Were you a reader?
Yeah. Our whole family, like we all read. My dad, my mom, both my sisters, like we all read voraciously. And yeah. And I remember just being like, man, well, okay. I remember my 2nd grade teacher, Mrs. Walker, was so great. She was such an incredible teacher. She's one of my all-time favorites. And my mom has a memory of Mrs. Walker talking to my mom and being like, your son really likes to write and his shit's like pretty rad. I'm paraphrasing, obviously, but
I'm sure
like
she said that, yeah.
And she's like, I think you should support it because he likes to write, and he's like essentially just learned how to write sentences last year or whatever in first grade, I think. And now he's already like coming up with these crazy weird stories, and I think you should support that. And my mom, I don't know if she really needed that because she's always been supportive of everything, but she's always been, and Rachel too, honestly, and Marnie, like they've always just been like, dude, like you should write. And they'd always read my little stories. I remember a story that I wrote. It was
I
like,
still have some of your old stories from when you were like, yeah. And everyone that you gave me, I saved. I don't have, unfortunately, I don't have them right here, but when we had the typewriter, remember?
Yeah. Oh my God, I
have
love
some
that
stories
thing.
from that era. But he was an amazing writer, super young. It was weird because he was writing about stuff that I couldn't see where he would have the emotional maturity to know, like to understand what he was writing. Because he was like 10 and writing about like tragic love affairs and stuff. And it was like, how does he even, where is he getting this stuff? It's coming from somewhere otherworldly almost. But a lot of my stuff, my early kid stuff was the same way. I didn't know what the fuck I was talking about, but I had all these emotions and these words that I wanted to use. And Sean did the same thing. It was so past his age level that he obviously was just really gifted.
So you wrote about unrequited love?
I remember writing about Vietnam one time, like about soldiers in Vietnam, like and that was gonna be my first novel. I was like, oh, this is gonna be a novel, and I hand wrote it. Like just like guys like, oh yeah. And then they went into the bunker and one of them threw cigarettes at him and said, hey, give me a smoke, kid, or whatever, like whatever. I just based off whatever movies I'd seen. I remember my mom bringing those stories to show her coworkers at AG Edwards when she worked over there in Brunswick. Like she's like, yeah, my friends think these stories are really good. I was like, yeah, like the critics have spoken.
Wow. So why Vietnam?
I don't know. I think I was just interested in it. Just like, well, I thought like war stories. Or, I don't even know if I specified Vietnam. I think it was just like umbrella war story. Just dudes like blah blah whatever. And I think part of that, I know that part of that inspiration came from, I saw, well, okay, one thing that I think was crucial in my development as a human and as a creative writer was the fact that neither of my parents like censored anything that we watched ever. Like movies. They were just like, oh cool, like The Shining, rad, that's a good movie, let's watch it. And which is that's like
Creep Show magazines at 6. Okay, go for it.
Yeah, totally. Oh, totally. Yeah. And I still have all those Tales from the Crypt magazines and stuff. But I remember watching the opening sequence when they're at boot camp of Full Metal Jacket.
Right.
And just being like, whoa, so that's what it's like, dude. That sounds fucking crazy and gnarly. And I think that was one of the main inspirations, because they were never in my developing novel of Vietnam, they were never in the shit, you know what I mean? They're always just like in the like training in the bunker, like whatever, just talking to each other, talking about girls, or I don't even know what. But yeah,
that's a pretty hardcore a movie to watch at a very young age. I mean, the language is, you can suck a golf ball through a garden hose, all that stuff.
Yeah.
And plus, the scene, the Joker,
dude,
I am in a world of shit, all that. That's disturbing.
It really is. It's such a great movie.
When we were out on 49, we had no TV, but we had like videos, like VHS videos, and we had like 5 or 6 videos, and that's it. And one of them was Sophie's Choice.
Yeah.
And one of them was
Mask.
Good Morning.
That's a good
Mask.
Christmas movie.
Good Morning Vietnam or something. Was that one of them?
I think
no, maybe not.
We also used to borrow movies from Bobby, from Mom's friend Bobby.
Oh, and yeah.
Because she had she pretty much had a video rental store at their house, like up on the ridge.
Yeah.
Any movie you could think of, dude, they had. Like, it was so sick. But yeah, and so we'd often borrow movies from them or rent movies or whatever, back when movie rental places still existed, and rent video games.
I remember when the Bubba's Bagels used to be the video store?
Yeah.
Do you remember when you broke the Nintendo?
Do you mean when you broke it and blamed it on me? No, did I really break it?
No. Yes, you really broke a Nintendo on Christmas Day.
How did it happen?
It was a Nintendo, the original Nintendo with cords, right? And so
NES.
we're playing, and Sean walked this way and it just walked through the cords and pulled the machine down onto the ground. But it was actually awesome because it didn't break all the way. It just did something funky to it. So it had lines in it. So when you're playing Super Mario, all the lines, all the secret hidden stuff were inverted. So you could see them. So it's like line, and then there'll be a little square that was inverted lines. And like, oh, secret mushroom. So we all kicked ass at that game. And everybody, if you went to someone else's house that had a Nintendo that worked, and you just know all the secret stuff, and they'd be like, oh, you're so good at this game. We're like, yeah. Look around for that stuff.
Well, you and Marnie were always good. You and Marnie could always beat the games. The only Nintendo game I ever beat was DuckTales, which I love because that was like my first. I think I got that game. I think that was a game that I got for Christmas, and I was like, yeah, this is my game. I'm gonna learn it. This is so sick. But I beat it. It was rad. The game was fun.
I did not remember DuckTales was available.
It was a good one.
Yeah, it was rad. And the soundtrack was really good. There's a band. I feel bad because I'm
Was it Texas Whorehounds?
No, it was the Austin Hooker Riot. No, I can't remember I can't remember their name, but they do covers. The Advantage, or I can't, but they're from, I think, from SAC, but a bunch of people from Grass Valley. But they do covers of Nintendo games.
Oh,
and I remember,
rad.
Yeah, it's really good. They're awesome. But they covered I think the Moon Level sound on the soundtrack on the Moon Level, I think it was, on DuckTales. I was like, dude, that's the best. That was my favorite song too, bro. Like, I was stoked on that.
So who were some of your influences in your writing?
Stephen King was a big one when I was growing up, because like our mom read a lot of Stephen King, and we all three of us kids read a lot of Stephen King. And we just thought
we just passed the book around, basically.
Yeah, totally. And and so I've always been into horror. Like I tried to write horror stories and stuff when I was a kid.
Mm-hmm.
And I remember the first time I read The Outsiders, that was like S.E. Hinton was kind of a big. I remember reading that, as being like, holy shit. I read it when I was in 7th grade for Mr. Huff's English class at Gilmore. And yeah, I remember just being like kind of blown away, because I remember he was like, yeah, she was 15 or something when she wrote this. He was like, not that much older than you guys. And I remember just thinking like, yeah, it's possible, dude. I could totally do it. And I remember just thinking that, and I still to this day think that book is incredible. Like, it's such a great book.
It is. It's one of my favorites too.
Yeah, it's so good.
I have not read that one. That's the movie, right? With Matthew Dillon, or
yeah, with like everyone. Patrick Swayze and Ralph Macchio and Rob Lowe and Emilio Estevez. And yeah, it's got everyone's in that movie. It's such a
I haven't even
movie.
seen that movie.
Really?
Mm-mm.
Oh, it's so good. I just listened to there's a podcast called Talking Schmidt that I listen to, and it's by a guy Schmitty who works over at Thrasher, and so he often interviews skaters. One episode he interviewed I can't remember what one of the House of Pain guys, not Everlast, but the other House of Pain guy. I'm having a hard time remembering his name, but he actually was like upset. He was telling a cool story where he actually bought the house where that movie was filmed and turned it into like a tourist thing where you can go look at it. And they got and S.E. Hinton has been very much helping him with it and has been in touch with him and helping him curate it. And he got as many of the actual set design pieces from the filming of that movie to the house. And yeah, it seems really cool. Like, I really want to go to it.
Where is it?
In Oklahoma, I want to say. Like, I forget where. I can look it up, but it's it looks really rad. Like I really want to do that. Go to that.
So how did you feel when Rachel moved to Oakland or San Francisco?
I was so stoked and jealous. I was like, dude, it was so rad. And then and then we had a place, and then Marnie and I had a place where we could go and escape to our place. Oh yeah, sorry, Tulsa, Oklahoma. That's where it was filmed. But yeah, it was so rad. It was so exciting. And we, cause Marnie, our dad's sister, our Aunt Susie, always lived in Marin County when we were growing up. And so we'd go there a lot, and she'd take us to the Bay Area and all that on little like field trips to Chinatown and San Francisco or whatnot. And I always was just fascinated with the Bay Area. I just thought it seemed so awesome, just so cool. And then when Rach moved here, it's like, yes, like now we have a connection. And we always, as I said, we always had kind of a connection with the Bay Area. Our cousin Shara went to UC Berkeley, and I remember her taking us on a tour around UC Berkeley when she first started going there. I remember just being like, I want to go to the school just to live in this town. Like, this is so rad. And she took us.
And they could come to my house and do whatever they wanted to. You know, they could come to Oakland and hang out for a weekend or whatever. And and I was the adult.
Right.
Was she though?
She was the adult. Well, you were actually a lot of times more mature than some of your roommates back then.
I was certainly the adult in my house. That's for sure.
Yeah.
I kept them alive, relatively safe from my friends.
And Rachel would always live in these rad like punk houses where there'd be people in bands and people who did freak shows and fucking like bartenders or whatever, you know what I mean? Like, and there was who was the foreign exchange student you lived with?
Junpei.
Oh yeah, Junpei. He was awesome.
Because I was teaching creative writing at an alternative school, and the exchange student there didn't like his host family, and so he asked if he could stay with us, and I was like, I mean, I was 20, like I wasn't an adult. I mean, I didn't feel responsible, but they were going to pay, like there was money involved. And so I was like, yeah. And he was funny. He was nice, but he was a weird guy.
Yeah. He would just kind of like hole up in that room where all the reptiles were. I feel like.
Yeah. And he got up, first thing he did was get a perm. Like he went and got a perm. And then he checked out like the porn shops down in San Francisco was the next thing he did. And then
nice.
Yeah, and he had OCD, and so he would come in the room and just like not say anything, and then start flipping the light switch on and off. Or he'd just go and mess with the stove dials. Like, stop touching that. He's like, oh, okay. So
do you remember that, Sean?
No, I don't remember that because he was whenever Marnie and I were down, because at that house. Rach was at that house. That was the first house that Marnie and I were able, where we were considered old enough to just go and stay with her at. Well, no, because we stayed at your house when you were in San Francisco too.
Yeah, alone. You came once alone, I think. But like came for a while. I think for like a week or something to the 47th Street house. I was the one on MLK, on 47th.
Yeah. Yeah.
I mean, it had kind of a rotating cast, but that was where Gary was there, and my dad was there for a while, and.
Yeah.
I don't know if you were there. Sean was living in a van outside. Not you, the other Sean.
So let me ask you this, Sean Orlando, right?
Yeah.
Let me ask you this, Sean. What was Rachel like then versus now?
I mean, she was essentially, I mean, kind of similar in a lot of ways, just kind of like doing rad shit and like interested in cool things that I would, like poach off her or whatever. And just, I don't know, just kind of similar. I mean, back then, obviously it was a different scenario, like living in the Bay Area, and she was young at that time. But to me, she was like this elder, brilliant, like person who was just involved in all this cool shit. And she had like a roommate who was on Jenny Jones, and she had like a fucking, you know what I mean? Just all this like cool shit going on in her life that I was always just like, what the stretch? And she worked at Tower Records on Telegraph, and we'd go there and just like hang out on Telegraph with no money, but Marnie and I would just walk up and down Telegraph, or we'd like, a lot of times I'd keep my lunch money and save it up. And that would be like my money to to go to Amoeba because that was like fucking Christmas going in there. But
how
yeah,
did you feel about him going to Amoeba versus where he worked at Tower?
I'd rather go to Amoeba than where I worked any day. Amoeba's rad.
Mhm.
I mean, Tower's Tower. I mean, Tower's cool. It's very Empire Records. You know, my career at Tower Records was very much like that movie, Empire Records. It was almost exactly like that. When I watched it, I'm like, that was my life. But Amoeba was just, Amoeba and Rasputin's were iconic, like amazing used places where you could get shit you couldn't get at Tower. So
Yeah.
the cool thing about Tower was I was the book buyer there, and we had rad books and magazines. We had some of the weirdest, coolest magazines on the avenue. But no, for music, you didn't go to Tower. No one went to Tower for music. You went there for Bass tickets. You went there for magazines, and you went there to rent videos. That's it.
I remember one time, Rachel, you and I were at Rasputin, and you took me. You're like, come here. I want to show you where the good shit is. And you took me to like the dollar cassette section, and you were like, just look through here. Shit hides. I remember you saying that. You're like, shit hides in here. And I found fucking I found the Queers tape, Love Songs for the Retarded. And I was like,
Golden.
dude, yeah, I was like, this is one of my favorite fucking tapes. You know what I mean? I was like, holy shit, this is in here. You were like, I told you, dude, like shit hides in here. Like, so rad.
So what was your plan when you were in high school? Like, where did you want to go from there?
I had none. I remember in high school. Well, I mean, I kind of did. At that point, I had begun playing guitar, and I was getting really into making music with my friends, Rob Grimes, who's to this day one of my dearest friends. He lives down the street. We moved to San Francisco together. He was the best man in my wedding. Like, and we were in a band that Rachel and I mentioned earlier, another Ed Herring, and he and we were playing music together, and that was really rad. And then my other friend Eddie, we were doing like hip hop beat kind of weird things together, and he would find these cool. Eddie was always able to kind of finagle borrowing. I remember one time he borrowed this epic keyboard that had like it reminded me of the keyboard that Ferris Bueller has, you know what I mean, where it's just like you could just do any sound in it. And I remember just being like, dude, I'm gonna fucking I remember I think I brought my 4-track recorder there and recorded some beats and whatnot. And it was so funny because I was so into playing music. And I was still writing at that time, but not as much. And skateboarding was like the cornerstone of everything at that point in my life. And I was really into playing music. And then I remember at one point just kind of thinking about how I had a really hard time finding people who were as into playing music as I was, who wanted to play with me. Rob Grimes was one of them. But and I remember it just getting really frustrating. And I was like, what the fuck? Like, I want to do this shit. Like, I really want to do this, but I didn't know anyone who really wanted to play music with me. And so it just kind of fizzled. And like, and I remember it went from that from playing music in bands, etc., or only a couple bands. And then when another Ed Herring broke up, Rob continued playing music, and now he's fucking killing it. Like, he's playing in these really great bands here in the city, and like got invited by Kirk Hammett to play his fucking Fear Festival in one of his bands here in the city. But like Rob continued playing music, whereas I kind of went the other way and was really focused on skateboarding. And then I got back into writing, and I was trying to do like kind of solo music kind of stuff, because I was like, fuck it, if no one wants to play music with me, then I'll just do it myself. And that was when I got my little 4-track recorder from Chris, whose family owns Foggy Mountain Music in Grass Valley. And he was able to give me like, you know, like kind of a wink like homie discount on one of those. And so I had this like cassette 4-track recorder that I record all this crazy shit on. I still remember, because we had all these cool instruments at the ranch, because my dad was very into writing and playing. Well, not I don't think but playing music. He loved playing music. I know he wrote music too, but he'd play like all the shit, Crosby, Stills and Nash and whatnot. But
I played the piano a lot.
Yeah, he
remember him
played the
saying.
yeah, he was really good at piano. And we had that piano that was like probably out of tune. It was totally janky. One of the keys just it had like a broken string on it. So it just
Oh
like
yeah,
if you
I
hit
think Evie came down and tuned it once in a while for him, I think.
oh really? Yeah, yeah, I can see
As much as
that.
it could be, but it did have that clanky key. That was kind
Yeah, yeah, yeah. But I remember I have one recording where I figured out, oh yeah, and then but I won't get ahead of myself. Where I figured out the Unsolved Mysteries theme song on the piano because I always thought that was such a creepy like dee 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 dee, and I recorded
It was
I made
creepy.
yeah, it was totally creepy. And I made this
Mm.
recording. I remember this recording I made where it was me playing that on piano with like rhythm or a harmonized because I had this two-tiered organ that I got from one of my other really close dear friends, Kirk. His mom had it. I think his mom had it, and they were like, "Yeah, we're just gonna get rid of it. If you want it, you can have it." And it was just this crazy like 70s miniature church organ kind of thing. It made the weirdest fucking sounds. But I used that as sort of like the or just kind of like as the backup. And then I put all these I found all these because I would record Unsolved Mysteries on my VHS tapes or whatever. And I put all these samples of Robert Stack being like a cold, dark street out in the middle of nowhere, Illinois. Somebody was there, but nobody or whatever. You know what I mean? I just try to find like these little sound bites of Robert Stack. And that was my song. I thought it was so sick.
His voice was creepy too.
It really was. He has such a great theatrical voice. Like he was such a great host. But
So there's a couple things I want to talk about. One is, do you have any memory, speaking of music, of Rachel's father, Mick, playing music? Or because you lived across from each other, right? Like your mom had a place across from Rachel's father.
did she? Maybe when we were young. I
No,
don't
yeah,
really.
the Park Avenue apartment.
Oh, was he living across from there?
He lived, so there's a driveway, right? And then the culverts were
Mhm.
down the bottom, wherever. And he lived in right across the driveway.
In
There's a
that,
big abandoned looking house, right? At the
yeah,
top
I remember
of the
that
road. And
house.
then behind it were a bunch of little cottages. He lived in one of those little
Oh,
cottages
oh,
for a
okay.
year. The whole time we were there, he lived there. Well,
Oh,
almost.
okay. My memories of
Uh,
that house are very sparse and scattered. Like
yeah,
because
how old were you?
we moved to Highway 49 house when I was in first grade, and that was like that house
Okay, yeah, you
was
were.
like I loved that house so much, even though that house was totally haunted. Going back
Super
to that,
haunted.
it was totally
Yeah.
haunted. Um, but yeah, but I do have memories later on of Mick when he was living at the house that Rachel referred to earlier. That was right off MLK. And I remember one afternoon, like I remember it very vividly. I was sitting on the couch in the living room. No one else was around. I think Rach was probably at work and Marnie was whatever, but I remember I was alone in that room, and Mick was kind of in the back of the house playing guitar. And it was kind of a meditative experience. I remember him playing all these cool surf songs, like it was so sick. And I remember just being like, holy shit, like he's fucking amazing. I remember just having that thought, like, he's fucking amazing, dude. Like this sounds so good. And it was at a time in my life when I was kind of relatively early in my experience with learning how to play guitar and getting really into playing guitar. I remember just thinking like, God, that sounds so good. And I remember when he came out, I was like, Nick, that sounded so good. Like that guitar sound, like that just sounded really good. I remember him being like, oh yeah, it's this new Telecaster I got. It sounds really, or so, I don't remember what kind of, it was like a really cool, I think it was a Fender that he had, but
It was either a Telecaster or Stratocaster. Those were his
okay,
babies.
it was probably his Telecaster because he was just like, and he kind of like chalked up more to the guitar than his, you know what I mean? He was like, yeah, it's a Telecaster. It sounds really good. I was like, dude, like you're fucking badass. But
So have you seen my new wah-wah pedal? Really excited about the wah-wah pedal.
that's so real.
One
Do you
thing that I
see
found out recently in this all this family history stuff I've been doing is that he played drums first. He didn't learn to play guitar till much later. He didn't play guitar at all in Absalom. which
Oh,
blew
wow.
my mind completely.
Wow.
John Schwartz. Yeah, none at all. Because I remember when I first put on the album, I'm like, that doesn't sound, because I can pick his guitar playing out of a lineup easily. And
Yeah.
I can always tell when he's not playing, especially his songs that he wrote, because I could totally tell. And I was like, that's not him. What is he doing? And I look at the album, it says he's doing vocals and percussion. I'm like, what? And what he was doing was, because there's 2 drummers as well. So what was he? I'm like, percussion's what? He was doing like the cowbell and the sticks that knock together, and the fish with the stick and the tambourine and harmonica. He was doing all kinds of those instruments, which was, pretty 70s, but also, yeah, blew my mind. I had no idea. He didn't learn how to play guitar till he started getting obsessed with the Stray Cats in the 80s. And then he got into surf music, and then he played with the Safaris for a while. And that's where his surf guitar, got serious.
Yeah.
But yeah, that wasn't his original. I guess he was a fantastic drummer, but he quit drumming because he hurt his hand.
Wow, crazy.
So let's talk about skateboarding. What does skateboarding mean to you, rather?
Everything.
I mean, kind of, yeah. It's kind of I've acquired a little bit of a varied relationship with it over the last few years, like after it almost killed me. But I mean, skateboarding was always, God, it gives me chills. I mean, just thinking about it, it was always just my when I was on my skateboard, I was in my place. I was it was like moving meditation. And when I was young, I remember my dad was really into sports, and he was a jock, I guess you'd say, but he wasn't the classic jock, like fucking being a dick and wedging people or whatever classic, like
He wasn't
He was like
Emilio
the popular-
Estevez from the Breakfast Club.
no,
He was like the popular jock. Like he's a star, basketball star, football, but he was really nice and funny, and everybody liked him. Like he was prom
Yeah.
king, and everybody thought that was good because, of course, he was. Like he was just
right.
well liked by everybody.
Everybody, like when I look a lot like my dad, and I'd have total strangers that were my dad's age when I was working at Good Times at the skate shop in Grass Valley. I would people would come in and just be like, "Are you Brian Sanford's son?" Like, because you look a lot like him. And without exception, they'd always just be like, "I loved him. Like, he's just the greatest guy ever." Because he was just, he was really nice, and he was a people pleaser, which wasn't so great for us who were in his family, because anyway, that's a whole other thing. But he was more concerned with everyone else than he was about his family, unfortunately, but and the opinions of everyone else. But so but what that resulted in was he'd always, whenever I played with my dad or Marnie, like whenever we played with our dad, we were always playing football or knocking the base, because we had this giant front yard at the ranch, and so we were always like knocking baseballs around or playing football, doing like little drills, playing one-on-one football. Oh, and then we had a half-court basketball hoop like in the loft of the barn, and so we're always playing horse up there and whatnot. And we had a ping pong table, all the shit. And
Pool table.
yeah, we
Horseshoe
had
pit.
yeah, all the things. Yeah, we had a pool table in the pool cabin on the about out in the woods behind the barn. And then I remember there coming a time, and so I always played soccer and baseball were the 2 things that I would always play, like in the leagues or whatever. And soccer I always loved. I always really, really loved soccer. Yeah, there he is. There's my
There,
dad.
I'm holding up a picture, Brian, of my stepdad.
Yep.
Do you see the resemblance?
Yeah.
I can't, but what is he doing?
It's just a school, like a
Okay.
school, like
School
a yearbook
picture.
photo. Yearbook
Yeah.
photos.
Yep. But and soccer I always loved, and baseball I always enjoyed. Little league, whatever, I thought it was whatever. But then as I started to get, and my dad was always my coach in baseball, and we had like it was so not really classic. Like, I feel very blessed to have had this, but it was kind of funny where my dad even built a baseball field out in the outskirts, in the woods behind not in the woods, but in a field out behind the barn, like, this is my field of dreams. He hand built like this crazy backstop so that the baseballs wouldn't go flying into the huge tangles of blackberry bushes behind it.
Good call.
And he worked for Parks and Rec in Grass Valley, and so he was able to acquire actual bases that they weren't using anymore from their storage or whatever. And so he went in and fully installed like real bases, and he measured it out, so it was like a real baseball field. And so we practice out there, and
Did Ray Liotta ever show up?
He did once. He was a ghost.
He came to Kite. Didn't he come to Kite Day? I feel like he came to Kite Day.
He came to Kite Day once. I think I was slipped a little bit of the acid that all the adults were taking that day. But that was an annual event at the ranch that I was too young. Like it ended before I was old enough to really.
Kite Day did?
Yeah, I mean, I was there for some of them, but I barely remember. Like, it's very, very vague memories. But that's another thing that I've had people talk about who remember it from before my dad's generation started having kids. They'd have Kite Day every year, and they'd fucking eat acid and mushrooms and just fly kites like in the field.
Oh, that makes sense. I mean, because I remember Kite Day, but I was too young to know what they were up to. But
so it was drug induced.
Oh, that doesn't surprise me. But
totally.
You have to understand that the ranch was a place, like it was originally, when it opened, quote unquote, it opened because it was supposed to be a place that people visited. Like they wanted it to be like a camp, kind of like, if there's like traveling churches or something like that, they were invited to stay there, and then you could pay a really small amount to have a little spot to camp in, and they would provide food and stuff. So it was always kind of a community place for a long time. And when I was a kid, I guess before, Sean would remember, but when I was 6 to 10 or whatever, there was town parties that would happen there. So like Kite Day was every year, and town was invited, like everyone was there. And everyone would come out to a big field, because the ranch was, I don't even know how many acres. I know it's 80? 80 acres or something.
Yeah.
Several big fields. And so one big field would just be, everyone in town would come out and fly kites. Easter Sunday, everyone in town was invited to come out to Easter egg hunts. So like my whole school would show up. Like nobody liked me at school, but I had such cool parties, because they were technically, in the kids' minds, they were my parties. But everyone was invited. And so there was always events out there, like at our house. So it was, and then that stopped at some point, but it was cool when it was happening.
When the acid ran out, it stopped.
Well, the Easter egg hunts were great because it's huge, acres of, I mean, it would only be in like it was at least a 2-acre area though, that there would be eggs hidden, and there was a golden egg that had a silver dollar in it. And so everybody's looking for the golden egg.
I'm still looking for that.
And I almost went to blows over the golden egg once. We both saw it and went for it at the same time, and it was ugly.
Dude.
So let's go back to skateboarding. What does it mean to you?
So so that's what I was getting at, was that when baseball started getting, and I was always very turned on and very fascinated by skateboarding, but I had an interesting relationship with it socially when I started getting older, because all right, well, let me go back. My very first skateboard was when I was living at our Park Avenue house, and my mom found, so it was the mid to late 80s. And my mom found a little like penny board kind of thing in the bushes at her work at Grass Valley Group. It was this tiny little skateboard. So she brought it home and gave it to me. And I remember just being like, what the fuck? Like, how does this even compute? And I remember standing on it in our driveway, or in like on the flat part of our driveway where we parked our cars. And I was too scared to even push or move. I was like, this just doesn't make logical sense. Like, this seems like it's just asking for a broken arm.
Well, we had a really steep driveway, so
yeah. It was sketchy. But and so I remember like just kind of like moving back and forth like on the skateboard, being like, this seems crazy. And then one day we would kind of barge around. We weren't supposed to cross any streets, but sometimes we would. And there was this dentist office right across, or a doctor's. I think it was a dentist.
It was a dentist's office, because that was like sweet roller skating.
Yeah, exactly. Yeah, that's the thing. Like people, those halls, huh?
Yeah, I go roller skate up there all the time.
Yeah. And so we go hang out over there. And one time I remember hearing this like racket that I didn't recognize, and going across the street to the dentist's office, and in the parking lot there were all these guys. It looked like a scene out of Thrashing. Like it was just all these guys with a launch ramp that were just fucking like doing all flying off this launch ramp, skating. I remember just being so like fucking bamboozled, just like, this is fucking amazing, like holy shit. And just yeah, I was just enthralled. And I remember one of the guys like came up to me, he was like, hey, what's up, dude, do you skate? I remember being like, oh, a little, thinking about like when I had gone back and forth. And he handed me his board. He's all, here, dude, go for it, like skate. And I was like, and I totally clammed up. I was like, how about not? Like, I was like, oh, I better not. Like, I think I better go home. My mom's calling or whatever.
And is that? Oh, I hear my mom.
Yeah, totally. And I've asked, and it's funny because thinking back on it, I'm sure that there are people that I now know because that was the mid '80s, and I've asked around, like asked like my friends Emil and some of the guys who are
Chris Sin, and I mean that's the age group. That
probably would have been like, probably would have been like Chris Sin and some of his friends, and like maybe John Cardiel or some of those.
And a lot of them went pro, right?
Yeah. Cardiel and Hansi Driscoll and Chris Sin, they all went pro. Although Cardiel, I think, was out in Lake of the Pines, or whichever one is out by Bear River. Is that Lake of the Pines?
Yeah.
He was out there, and I think that I remember hearing some just stories about like, oh yeah, he's LOP, like oh, they're different or whatever, I mean, just like, it's like, oh yeah, they go skate Magnolia or whatever, like they don't come to Grass or whatever. I don't even know. It's just funny, all the folklore from before I was old enough to know what was up. But okay, so that happened, and then so skateboarding was still like kind of in my, like it was in the corridors of my subconscious very much. And then the Ninja Turtles movie came out, and I was like, holy shit, they're fucking skating in the sewer. That's so sick. And there's all these like rad skate scenes where they're just like bombing down the sewer and stuff like that. It's so sick.
Was that like 1989 or something?
Yeah, I think right around there, 89 or so. And and that would make sense because 89 was when I was in second grade, which was when I met Rob Grimes, and who was the friend I was talking about, who we played in the band together and stuff, another Red Herring. And he had two skateboards, him and his brother each had a skateboard, and they had the skinny walkway that went down in front of their house. And that was the first, I still remember, that was the first time that I like really skated. And I kept trying to, it felt more comfortable for me to stand goofy foot. And so I kept trying to like bomb down this walkway goofy foot with my right foot forward. And then
am I hearing you saying goofy foot?
Yeah, goofy.
I thought you said Busey foot, like Gary Busey. And I'm like, what's that?
That could work too. He's kind of goofy. But and then I remember trying it regular footed, and it just felt like it was like a fucking puzzle piece clicked into place. And I remember just bombing down and just being like, holy shit, this is what it feels like. This is what's up. This is what it's like to move and actually skate. And so we set up cones or some shit, kind of where we had to weave around and go down this thing. And I have footage on one of the tapes where my dad came to pick me up at Rob's. I was like, Dad, check it out. I'm a skater. Like, I can skate now, blah, blah, blah. And bombing down the thing. And then that year at Christmas, my mom, who, as I mentioned, has always been very supportive of whatever I was into, she bought me a fucking Ninja Turtles board. And she has a photo, or maybe I have it somewhere, but of me just standing like beaming with it, like a Ninja Turtles complete setup with I think it might be all of them on the bottom, just like all like with
I'm pretty sure I have a photo. Was it for Christmas?
Yeah, it was for Christmas.
I have a photo. I have that photo somewhere.
Okay, yeah. And I was just like, holy shit. And I would speaking of safe ways to enjoy my childhood, we lived right on Highway 49, like right on Highway 49. And I would go up to the top of our driveway, and then just like on the road pretty much, or on the highway, and then just bomb down the section of our driveway before it went to gravel, and then I'd have to jump off or whatever. and then that was my shit, and I loved it. And I would always try to skate from then on. I'd always try to just skate whatever I had, but I never really had much. And my parents were always they'd always look at the prices of newer skateboards, because then when the 90s came and skateboards started being like double, like a with a nose and a tail, double kick or whatever, then I was kind of like, I want one of those because I want to skate the way that guys who ride those skate. Because I had, like the 80s shit was cool, but I was kind of like, I want to learn how to skate like those guys do. And I'd have my mom buy me like a Thrasher magazine every now and again. I just look at it, just completely enthralled. It just seems so fucking rad. But also, I've also been, I was always really socially shy when I was young, and I always felt very unpopular because I was. but I was always kind of like, I don't know how to describe it. I later became very much an outcast, like when I got into Nirvana and all that shit. But I was always kind of almost in a way timid and a little bit shy I never really want to dress like a skateboarder or like tell anyone that I had a skateboard, because I assumed that all the skaters at my school would think I was a poser and just like start making fun of me. Because I was, I've always had security problems, and I always felt like I always felt like a fucking loser, like kind of when I was young.
Why do you feel that was?
I don't really know. I think in part I kind of wanted to be an outcast in some ways, because I wanted to be punk rock like Rachel. But then also I thought with what my dad was into, like the sports stuff, I'd meet all the jocks that I met when I was a kid were fucking assholes, and I didn't want to hang out with any of them. Mm-hmm. And all the popular kids at my schools too, at Scotton and at Lyman Gilmore, they're kind of mostly assholes to me. And so I kind of went the extreme end of that, where I was like, fuck you then, like fuck you all, like I'm just gonna be weird. And like I have pictures of when I was in 6th, 7th grade of wearing like a Sex Pistols t-shirt, like with my hair all ratted up and all where I remember I'd have my hair short, and then I'd wake up when my head was all crazy with bedhead, and I'd just spray it with hairspray, because that was me like being punk rock or whatever. But when all that was kind of like in fruition and really starting to happen, when I was the age, when you kind of reach that age when you really start making your own stylistic choices and kind of really learning what you are really into, as opposed to what you think you're supposed to be into. I shouldn't say you as in everyone, but I just mean I should say me. But that was my experience.
Yeah, no, I think everybody goes through that, where they stop trying to impress other people and like figure out what they like.
Yeah. And I remember when I was at that age, that was when I discovered Nirvana. And that was like a huge turning point for me with everything. Like Nirvana honestly changed my life. Like I got fucking obsessed. Rachel remembers, like I grew my hair out. I was obsessed. And all the bands that I discovered through Nirvana after I read Come As You Are, that really great biography about them. And they mention all these bands like Mudhoney and the Butthole Surfers and the fucking Melvins and like Tad, like all these bands that I listen to this day. They're so great. But that was when I was really discovering all that stuff. And it was also, I remember the first year, it was around that time when it was time to start signing up for Little League. And I had just discovered skateboarding, but I'll get back to that. But I remember my dad being like, he was like, all right, so, and it was the same thing every year. He'd be like, all right, so here's our choices for teams that we can be like, let me know what team you want to be and blah, blah. And I still can picture it very vividly. I remember being in our kitchen and I just said, Dad, I don't think I want to play this year. And it was just like, like a total record scratch. Like when my dad was like, I remember him just being quiet and looking at me, just being like, really? And I was like, yeah, Dad, like I'm kind of like last year, because it was when we were getting to the point in Little League when the men were being separated from the boys, if you will, where like because everyone played fucking t-ball and everyone played farm, whatever the fuck. But then later on, it was really just the jocks who were in it, essentially, at that point, where the kids were pitching instead of the coach pitching. And I remember my team, I was on the Rangers, and I still remember some of the kids. I was on a team with a bunch of the bullies in my class who would often like fuck with me, and thankfully they're actually nice to me after they were on my team, and after my dad was the coach. But that was like kind of, it was kind of a hard one where I was like, fuck this, where I felt like, I remember just like having extreme anxiety before practice, but mostly before games. And when I was going up to bat, I'd be fucking like shitting myself. Like I'm batting and I am on the spot right now. And if I remember like more than once cry, like really trying not to cry when I was sitting in the dugout because I got out. And it just wasn't fun. And I remember telling that to my dad and just being like, Dad, it's I'm sorry, but it's not really fun anymore. And I remember him being class. My dad was very non-confrontational, but he would always express his anger in just like weird in different ways. And that day I remember being like, oh, well, okay, well, if you don't want to do it, then you don't want to do it. Okay. And I remember just being like, Dad, like, can we talk about this? Like, I'm sorry. I know you want to be my coach, but, and I remember him, like, you could tell that he felt where, I think that was kind of one of the first real disconnects that he was feeling, that we all feel from, I don't even have any kids, but that I think all parents feel with their kids when they get to be, like around the age that Brianna is, where, like 12, 13, 14, where it's like, okay.
Yeah, when they stop being your little buddy and they start being themselves.
Yeah.
And they start splitting from you, the separation. It's hard. It's a hard thing to not make a face about when it's happening.
Right. And I remember my dad just being like, he was like, no, if you don't want to do it, then we just won't do it. And he like threw the thing in the trash. And I was like, Dad, and I was like, are you still going to coach? He was like, well, I don't want to coach if you're not going to be on my team. And they just like went outside. And I can still picture like looking out the kitchen window and just seeing him like walk across the front yard, and just like going out where he went to go probably like chop some wood or go whatever, like just do some shit to kind of take his mind off things. And we're just being like, damn, dude, I failed my dad. But I had just, it was right before then when I got my first regular, like new school shaped skateboard. And it was ever since that time, it was October of 1995. And it was a fucking life changer. It was a serious life changer. And I remember my friend Matt Egan gave me that board. He gave me the deck. And that setup was hilarious because it was my first like new school setup. But I remember because Matt Egan and I were playing in a band. What was the name of that band? That was another funny one. God, I've got it. I think I still have one of our like demo tapes or whatever. Like
No.
very emphatic quotation marks used there. But so Matt had been playing bass and I was playing guitar, and we were playing music together. And one day at Gilmore, he was like, hey, I'm going to walk down to Foggy Mountain Music or his parents owned Comtech, the computer store right there down next to where Ground Zero Comics used to be. And he was like, oh yeah, I'm going to my parents' house to set up a new board. And he had just gotten a new deck. And so I walked down with him to Comcast, and he set up his new board, and he had his old board sitting there. It was a Mad Circle Everslick that was all fucked up, and it was all chipped up and all messed up. But I remember looking at it just being like, what are you gonna do with that? Like, what are you gonna do with that deck? And I remember him looking at me, and he was like, nothing, throw it away. Do you want it? I was like, yeah, really? I can have it? He's like, yeah, but you got to buy me a pick. He's like, buy me a pick at Foggy Mountain. I'll give you my skateboard. I was like, deal. And so I fucking like, I probably like spared change off his parents to buy him a pick or whatever. But I went and bought him a pick, and then I brought that skateboard home, and that was one of those times that there's a very adamant like before and after of that day, because it was just like, I have a fucking skateboard now, like a real. And like I said, I'd had these weird setups. One I had that was so crazy. It was like an 80s setup. And I didn't even have grip tape on it, which was fine to me. I was like, who needs grip tape? Like, whatever. And I just had no, and I didn't hang out with any skaters because all the skaters at my school were all really popular and like kind of the cool guys. And I was definitely not that. And I never really like, I was never friends with any of them. So I didn't know anyone who skated besides Matt. Matt Agnes was kind of like my in to all that shit because he hung out with all those guys. But yeah, dude, like that was crazy. And I remember telling my friend Mike Ferraro the next day, being like, dude, I got a deck. I just need some trucks. I need some wheels. And he was like, I've got some trucks if you need them. Like my aunt gave them to me. They're from the 70s. So they're really white. They were serious. They're indies. And they were like, dude, they were so crazy. They came out, they came, I remember setting up to that board because the deck I had was like a 7.5. It was really skinny because it was the early 90s or like, 95. And the wheels on, and I took the wheels off my Ninja Turtles setup that I still had in the barn. So I had these big yellow wheels on these trucks that were so old that they had the old school mounting bolt holes. So I had to drill new holes in them. And so like the wheels stuck out on either side of my board. I have footage of me the first time Eddie ever came over when we made all these movies. And there's like footage of me like, yeah, check it out. Here's my skateboard, blah, blah, blah. But so that was my first setup and it was so crazy. And that was just, I mean, God, after that, it was a life changer.
Well, philosophically, what does skateboarding mean to you?
I mean, that's really, it's become so many things to me over the years. I mean, I essentially met my wife through skateboarding because I met her through Low Card, the skateboarding mag that I was working at and that I still write for. And I pretty much moved to San Francisco because of skateboarding. Like that was why I moved here, it's always been sort of like one of the skateboarding capitals of the world. And it's very much, it's in a lot of ways it's shaped my life as it stands now. Like it's very much, and I've had, I don't skate very much now because I guess it was 5 years ago. It was right when Trump started taking office. So I was 17 and I was just like, fuck everything. Like Trump's in office. Like, this is horrible. This is crazy. And I went skating with my friends and I fell and I hit my head and I ended up cracking my skull and bleeding into it and had to get brain surgery. And that was a really hard, long recovery. And all the doctors were saying pretty much like, you're dumb if you ever step on a skateboard again. And I was like, I'm dumb if I don't, or kind of like I can't, that's not even really a thing. You might as well ask me to like stop eating or something like, but yeah, like I said, I don't skate much anymore, but I wear a helmet and shit now. And I won't be like, now, before, if I was going anywhere within walking distance, I was skating and that was that. Now it's not really like that. I'll usually just walk, but that's also mostly because my wife, because she gets really nervous whenever I skate and I don't really like to make her feel that way. So I'll just like walk places. But
well, and he was told to stop skating years and years ago after another accident, and he said, fuck that. Like literally those were his words.
right, really, that's funny.
They were the first words you said.
Wow, really?
Fuck that. Yeah. You don't remember that story? I didn't tell you.
I don't
I know
remember.
you don't remember it.
Well,
I know
let's
you don't remember it, but I don't remember that story.
let's talk
No.
about, I mean, we're getting out of high school anyway, so let's talk about that event.
Okay, so I had a friend. I'll give you, here's my perspective of what happened in real time. I had a friend named Brandon, who was a very close friend of mine. And he'd had a separation with his family because of religious differences, where he hadn't been talking to his family, for his parents specifically, for I think it had been a matter of years at this point. And we were 20 years old, and he asked me to write a story for him. And because he was like, remember when Brandon Fowler used to go to the Sierra Nevada Memorial Hospital and take relights out of the ashtrays? I was like, yeah. He was like, I always thought that that'd be a really cool backdrop for a story, but I don't know what the story would be, but I think that you could write a good one. So I just want to tell you that idea, and then maybe you could write it someday. I was like, yeah, dude, I like that a lot. I'll totally write that. So I worked over it for a while, and then I finished it one day, and it was when I was working at Ike's Quarter Cafe. R.I.P. But the cafe,
Oh.
not Ike. But so I was working at Ike's one day, and I was like, I'm gonna bring my notebook. I have it around here somewhere. I'm gonna bring my notebook so that I can go find Brandon after work. Sorry about this, but and read him the story that I wrote for him. Is this it? No. And so I just assumed that this was before cell phones really were a thing, and I assumed that he was at our friend's up the hill up on Pasquale. So I went up there. I was like, "Where's Brandon at?" They were like, "Oh, he's laying down in the garage." I was like, "Okay, I'll just go ahead and ask him what that's about." So I went out in the garage, and he was laying down on this big pile, just like gnarly blankets that have been laid out up there or whatever. I was like, "Brandon, what's up, dude?" And he's all, I was like, what's your deal? Like, what's going on? He's all, dude, I'm really tired. And I'm tired because I've been working all day. I was like, oh yeah, sick. Did you get like another, because he was washing dishes at the Newman at that time. I was like, oh yeah, were you at the restaurant? He was like, no, I've been working with my dad, dude. And it was just like, what? Like, really? You've been working with your dad? And his dad was a tree limber. And he's all, yeah, my dad got in touch, and he said that he wanted to get back. He said that he wanted to reestablish our relationship. And he asked me if I wanted to work with him, and so I said yeah, and I'll be making really good money, and yeah, we're gonna be working now. I was like, dude, that's so fucking right. And I was so happy for him that he'd had that kind of like that form of closure with his family, because that was really hard for him when he was going through that with his family, with his parents. So I read him the story that I written for him, and I was very relieved because he liked it, and then we hung out that night and partied. And then my next memory after that is of being walked through the halls of a hospital with a nurse on my arm, and she was just kind of being like, be careful, like walk slow, kind of like essentially teaching me how to walk again. And then she pointed into a room, or I remember looking into a room that was really dark. We were in the ICU, looking into this really dark room and seeing my friend Sam in there, and he was looking out into the hallway. And the nurse was like, oh yeah, there's your friend Sam. And I remember like throwing up the horns, and I'm like, Sam, what's up? And he didn't respond in any way. And she just said like, oh, he must be really tired. But we can see him again tomorrow. And then my next memory after that is being taken in a wheelchair out of that hospital and being put into another ambulance to be transferred somewhere else. And that was, I was being transferred from, turns out I was being transferred from Sutter Roseville, where I'd been in the ICU, to Mercy Rehab in Sacramento, because I had survived. And I kind of, at that point, my memory was really strange, because I never remember finding out what had happened, because I had just been woken up from an induced coma. But I remember knowing what had happened. And that was that I'd been in a car accident, and that my friend Brandon was dead. He had died on the scene, and Sam was in the hospital still, and that Eddie was at home, and Eddie was okay. He had broken his leg, and he was cool. And so that's what happened. And it was a very long journey of recovery for both me and my family. But it was very different because for my family, like who had been kind of on pins and needles worrying if I was going to survive or not, after I lived, I feel like the apex of their emotional struggle was on the mend, whereas mine was just beginning. And so it was really weird then. And I was still really foggy. As far like emotionally, I was just like, what, everything's cool. And I remember feeling weird because I hadn't cried for Brandon, knowing that he had died. But then my family said, like, no, you cried. Like, as soon as you found out, you were crying. But I still didn't remember that. And I remember feeling bad about that, being like, what the fuck is my problem? Like, do I even realize what's happening? And that was one of the examples of me just kind of feeling like I was broken. Because I was broken, but I was mending. And it was a long road that I'm still on to this day, but it is as it is. And as of now, I'm the only surviving member of that car accident, but I'm happy to be alive.
Your recovery for having a severe TBI is really miraculous.
Yeah.
I mean, my day job, I worked with a lot of TBI survivors, and the range of symptoms and level of disabilities is wide, from everything from cognitive to mobility, and your mobility and your cognitive is pretty amazing.
Yeah, that's what I keep like tripping on that. I mean, a lot of the guys like Mikey America and Gus and Emil and a lot of my friends back in Grass Valley, they just call me the Miracle. Still, they're like, "What's up, Miracle?" Like, that's not like that's my name always, but you know what I mean. Like they obviously very much remember it, and a lot of people remember that. I think a lot of people grasp it even more than I do, because from my perspective, I was just kind of like, what? I woke up. Like, you just wake up, and then when you come out of a coma, right, after having like your skull smashed in and getting like metal plates put in your face, and like, you know what I mean? Like I was like, what? I'm just like doing it, and I'm dealing with it. It's really hard, but I'm dealing with it, and I'm healing. And it took me. It's still to this day. Like a lot of. I just saw my neurologist at Kaiser, and it was her first time seeing me, and she was looking at the scans of my brain and seeing the scar tissue in two different places on my brain, one from the car accident, one from the skateboarding. And she was like, what the fuck, dude? You know what I mean? Like, she was like, I'm a neurologist, and I like rarely see people with this kind of a situation who are able to be as cognizant as you are.
Yeah.
I'm very
your
grateful for that.
recovery was actually, I mean, it was a miracle. There's still, I mean, besides having, good health, being at the best trauma center in California, it helps. The fact that you got there so fast because of there was off-duty EMTs driving behind them, and that saw the trees swaying. And so he had the first people to respond right after the accident were people who knew what to do. So they also weren't going to revive him. Sean was not alive when they found him, and they revived him, and they revived him several times. I mean, he should not have survived that. They really shouldn't have. There's all these factors, I think, that went into his recovery, including his health at the time and his age at the time, and the care that he got. But even with all that, it shouldn't have been like it was, because there was no reason for any of us in the first few days to think he was going to survive at all. I mean, that would be silly to even hope for that. And we kept getting these little reprieves, like, well, he might survive another week. Well, he might, but he'll never come out of the coma. Well, he might come out of the coma, but he'll never be, he'll never be verbal. He'll never walk it. And they kept like moving the bar up. And then just the fact that, except for some small changes, and I'm sure things that he notices, you wouldn't know. that he suffered a brain injury like he did, because he suffered internal injuries as well, and there couldn't, typically they don't treat both. When you have that many internal injuries and that serious of a head injury, they usually just don't even bother because there's no point. But they had a machine that they had never used on anyone else successfully that they used on him, and it worked. And so he's in medical journals, I think, aren't you?
I think so.
Yeah, he's in some medical journals about this specific gadget that was designed to save people who had both, chest and head stuff going on, and it never worked on anyone. It had never worked yet, and he was the first person it actually worked on. I don't remember what it did. It did some weird thing where it kept the swelling down the brain while they did internal. I don't know. It was complicated, but I mean, the brain surgeon at Sutter Roosevelt, who first, he was like, here's some funeral pamphlets, and then walked out. He didn't even pretend there was any hope. And then when Sean started to make his recovery, he was so funny. It's like this really kind of mean, grumpy surgeon guy. And then all of a sudden he'd come in, he's like buying pizza for the nurses, and he was because he had this huge win, like this was a huge notch on his belt, was that Sean, woke up and was relatively, I mean, at the time he wasn't okay, but after a while, but you saw him just change, and watching him gave us a perspective of how miraculous it was. Just, he was like, no way, I can't believe that worked. and when he thought it was amazing, obviously it was.
Rachel, can you tell the story about when he was told he wouldn't be able to skateboard again?
Oh, well, yeah. Well, when he was in an induced coma for a month, I think. It's about a month. And when we were all there when he woke up, when they woke him up, and it was slow, he was having a lot of hallucinations and stuff at first, and he was really kind of freaked out. But then when he finally started to be, look around and see us, and we could see that he was recognizing us, and we had no idea how much damage had been done. So we didn't know if he was going to know who we were or who he was, or if he's going to talk, or we didn't know what the case was going to be. So we were all just kind of like bated breath, like watching. And my mom was, of course, she gets too close. It's like, Sean, you were in an accident, loud, you can hear her. And he just kind of looked at her and okay. And she said, oh God, what she said, you may not be able to walk again. I think she said something about him, there was that he was really hurt and he may not be able to walk, and he had a trach hole at the time, and he put his hand over and he went, skate, but skate, like that. And she went, no, honey, you're not going to be skating anymore. That's not a thing. And he looked at her and he turned his head away. He went, fuck that. And then that was the first conversation we had with him when he came out of the coma. He just said, fuck that. And then just wouldn't look at her like, you're dead to me. Right. Suggesting such a thing. But then I spent a lot of time talking to him right after, when he was talking, but his memory was still really bad. He had really short-term memory. So you could say something and then, literally 2 minutes later, he'd repeat it back like he just thought of it. Or, it was when the nurses were coming in and going, what's my name? At every 10 minutes, and he couldn't remember from 10 minutes. So I doubt he remembers this, but I talked to him a lot because I was so fascinated with his experience, just his coma. I wanted to know if he remembered anything, or if it was dreaming, or if it was just nothing. And you told me that at the time, you said that you did remember, you could hear people, you mentioned names of people who, very few people were allowed in after the first 2 days to visit. But the people who were let in, you named them. You said, well, I was skating, of course, and on these big hills, and I was with this person, I was with Rob, and and you were naming the people who had come in to see you specifically, which I guess would kind of be the usual suspects, but not really, so, and then you said, and I remember you were making me laugh, and and you kind of described exactly how every member of the family was reacting in the room while you were still in the coma pretty well, but you could have guessed too how we all act, Marnie was stressed and Mom was being abrasive and I was making jokes, and it was it's pretty typical of what we would all be doing. So I guess you could have guessed, but it seemed like you had been semi-conscious of what was happening around you. But you said that the whole time that you were just skating, and you were with this person, that person, you were skating on these big hills, big green hills, like they were grass, which is weird because you wouldn't be skating on grass. But yeah, your whole experience as you related it to me at that point was that you were just skating in this amazing place with a bunch of people, with a bunch of your friends.
It was like skating heaven.
Yeah, it must have been
Totally.
maybe that's your heaven.
Sounds,
Big
sounds
rolling
rad.
hills.
So so what happened? I mean, let me ask you this. What do you feel like you gained from that accident? Like, was there anything that you feel like, you know, if you that hadn't happened, this wouldn't have happened type of thing?
At that point in my life, I was in a really dark place. I had just attempted my second try of moving out of Grass Valley, which I had been desperate to do since I was a kid. And I had moved to Oakland, crashed and burned. I had a job for 6 months, got like laid off, blah, blah, blah. I remember being I was honestly like kind of miserable while I was living there anyway. And then I just had to move back to fucking Grass Valley, and I had to move back in with my dad. And I remember like first going back and my dad being like, he was pretty much, I remember him saying, I know that you're sad that you moved back to Grass Valley, but think about from my perspective, I just had my house to myself again, and now you're back. I was like, but
he wasn't very hospitable, I guess.
No, I mean, he was like in the literal sense, like just where, you know, he was like, you can live here, blah, blah, whatever. But then I was immediately trying to find somewhere else to live. And I like tried living at Jake's house up in Pasquale, and then his mom kicked us all out. And then I tried to move in with my friend Brandon Fowler at Eddie's house, because he had an island garage. And then that just never really like panned out because I wanted to, but then it was the like it was it was, well, that would have been anyway. It was really fucking cold out, I remember, and I was like, and it would have, I remember Brandon being like, we can't, it would be useless to even have a heater in this room, like it's literally like trying to warm out the outside, so we're just gonna have to bundle up, you know. I was like, fuck this. So I ended up not doing that. Essentially I was just, and my writing had really suffered a lot when I moved back home, and that was really frustrating. I was really trying to write more, but I just wasn't feeling inspired to. I was just like, fuck everything, like this is dumb. And I was working at Ike's, which I actually really liked, and so that was cool. And I was reconnecting with friends, including Brandon and Eddie and like Sam, who I hadn't really like connected with much even before then, but we were starting to kind of bond a little bit. And so there were some cool aspects like that. But I really felt like I had just traveled a very long and tiring road to end up at a dead end, and I had no fucking idea what to do next.
What turned it around?
I was really depressed, and so the accident happened, and then that sort of shifted all my priorities, where I was like, obviously I just need to try to get better. And then my girlfriend at the time, Sarah, she came back into my life. We had been split up for a while, and then she came back into my life after I was hurt, and then and she was one who was like, let's move, like let's get a place together. And that was huge. Like that was a really big thing, because I'm not sure what would have happened otherwise. It might have worked out, but I remember just saying to her, like, I'm not ready, you know, like I'm not ready. And she essentially said, like, you'll never be ready until you just do it. So let's fucking do it. Like, let's move into a place. So move into a cute little place in Grass Valley down the Bar Meadows. And I was just, you know, working at Hikes and all that stuff. And after that, I never moved back to home. I never moved back to the ranch ever after that. And so that was really big. And Sarah and I split up. Like it ended up not being right for us. But we're still friends. We're still close. I'm actually good friends with her family as well. Like we're all really cool with each other. Her sister actually got me gigs writing the book reviews that I write for different horror online magazines. all these really cool, I get sent all these really cool horror books and stuff that I get to read and do reviews for. But that I don't know, like it kind of, I remember really shifting where I kind of, I mean, it was hard and it was a challenge, but I wasn't depressed anymore really after that. Like it really put things into perspective where I was like, I'm alive, dude. Let's I don't know, let's do something, fucking whatever, you know. And writing was really hard after the accident because I was still, my brain was very much recovering. And it was really hard to retain my attention long enough.
Yeah, your work from that time is interesting. It's different.
I'm sure, yeah, I can imagine. And yeah, because I did a couple of zines after that, but yeah, it definitely, it's hard to even really put into words, but it definitely shifted my whole perspective on not really on the meaning of life or anything like that. I didn't find God or anything like that, but it definitely shifted sort of the priorities of just kind of, I can skate and I can write and I can be around friends. And I sort of began narrowing my focus on all the awesome people that I was still surrounded with in Grass Valley. I still had a lot of really great people who I was living amongst in Grass Valley, and all the skateboarding community, honestly, they really came through, and they're, sorry to get emo, but they I don't know, it was really rad. And this is my fucking family, you know, like they're, I don't know, it was just rad in some ways.
Yeah, they did. His friends really rallied around him, and I mean, the whole community did really. I mean,
Yeah.
you know, it was the accident touched the whole community. It was 4 boys that, you know, everybody knew, and only 2 of them made it for, you know, that point. And
Yeah.
so, but you know, Ike's was huge about, you know, they helped raise money. I mean, everybody were really amazing.
Yeah.
It was like, and you know, my sister and I had to bounce chicks out of the ICU, like they were coming in mini skirts, wanting to get backstage.
You feel like that.
What?
The ladies were coming to see you, Sean.
Oh, we cock blocked hard. Both of us were like,
Really? That's funny.
Well, these girls came up to us. It was like day 3 or something, and you know, Marty and I are just a hot mess, and we're you know, neither of us are very charming when we're not in a good place and haven't gotten sleep. And these girls come up and they said, "Do you know who Sean Sanford's sisters are? Because we're going to con them into getting us in there." They said that to us.
Wow.
Marty, she's like,
Oh my God, I can only imagine.
we both kind of went to 11, but Marnie was like right ahead of me. She's like, yeah, you want to know who his sisters are?
It's hilarious.
Dumb bitches. Yeah, no, that was bad planning on their part. I don't know why they asked, like, why they, yeah. But they were dressed like they were going backstage. They were like, had like little hoochie outfits on, and we're like, we're gonna get back there. We're like, no, you're not, ever. You'll never get back there. You're never gonna see anyone again if you don't get out of our faces.
So what happened when you started engaging and really started to write again? Like, when did it start feeling, okay, I'm back?
I'll tell you when it happens. To be honest, like it's well, it kind of started to, one of the times that it really started to was I went on a train trip when I'd been out of the hospital for about a year and actually about a year, almost to the day. It was the January after I'd gotten out of the hospital, right? Yeah, it must have been.
That's about right.
And I had a little bit of money from the insurance because my dad was a teacher then, and he had really good insurance, and I was still on his insurance when I was hurt, thankfully, which I would have been kicked off of in about 2.5 months after the accident because I would have been 21 then.
And if that had happened, he would not have gotten the care that he had,
Mhm.
or get into the rehab that he got into. That was a huge part of his recovery too, was that insurance. That was such a timing thing.
Yeah, totally. And I was like, fuck, you don't want to go travel. Like I'd always wanted to travel. And I had heard about, and I was a little bit scared to go to Europe and travel that much, like be all out, like go, like it just felt like going to another planet. And so I knew I'd heard about the North American Rail Pass, which I think Adrian from Ike's told me. I think she's the one who told me about that, because I feel like she did it when she got out of high school when we talked about it. And I saw it sounded rad. It was essentially an open BART ticket for the whole country, both the US and Canada, or you can go wherever you want for a month. And so, and it was only $500 or something. Like, it wasn't much for like a month of travel. It was really rad.
Was it Amtrak?
Yeah, on Amtrak, and the VIA, I think it's called, up in Canada. And you had to have at least 2 destinations in Canada in order to get it. And so it was so fucking rad. So I just barged for about a month. I don't think I was gone for the whole month. I think closer to 3 weeks or so. And I was just writing the whole time. When I was on the train, I was just like fucking and just writing stories and more story. I actually found the journal recently. Is this it? I found it. No, this is, oh wait. No, but anyway, it was a journal, a really great, very similar to the, more like a sketchbook, but with lines. It's really nice fucking book that my I'm gonna get emotional again, but my creative writing teacher at Sierra College, Judy Crow, this really great teacher that I had. When she found out I was in the hospital, she had a card signed by the whole class that she gave to Katie Bradine to give to me, and a journal to write in, like, that Katie brought to me. I think when I was I think Katie came and saw me, and her sister Sarah. I think they came and saw me in SAC maybe. And they dropped off this really cool picture of me and Brandon that was taken about a year before the accident, and this really cool journal notebook. And so I remember having
to her lately. Katie.
Oh, really?
Yeah. About other random stuff, but yeah,
Oh,
sorry.
yeah.
I was just the name was familiar. I'm like, oh, like I'm talking about
Yeah.
her online about Damien. Damien just passed away, and she was friends with him, I guess. So.
Oh, okay. But yeah, Katie and Sarah were always great, really great friends. And so I had the journal, and just every day, I think I filled out that one and had to buy a new one while I was on the trip. So I was just writing shit, and I was so inspired. And I was writing, like I said, I was writing mostly fiction, just because I was super inspired by all the people I was seeing, and just all the because at that point in my life, I'd been to California and Winnemucca, Nevada,
Winnemucca.
where me and Rachel's grandma lived. And I'd been to Oregon with Mom on that road trip that we took once. But like I just been barely up into Oregon, but that was it. And that was the extent of my traveling at that point. And so it was so incredible. It was such a cool trip, and I was alone, which was really nice too. And it was in January, so it was just like a weird time. Like, everything was all cold, and going up into Canada, I was like, this is crazy. But
what a great writing retreat, though. Just yourself alone on a train. The scenery is always changing, but there's nothing else to do.
Yeah.
But write or look out the window, right? Like,
exactly. It was so sick. And then I would like get to these cities and these towns and just go explore and run around and fucking, like, that was my first time going to New York. And like, I went to Toronto and Seattle and Vancouver and Savannah, because I'd always wanted to see Savannah, Georgia. I just always thought that just seemed like a neat town, and it was a cool town. And then I went to New Orleans because I'd always died to see I'd always wanted to go see New Orleans, and that was
Did you throw the beads?
No, because it wasn't Mardi Gras.
That's right. It was January, but I mean, you could have. It's February, right?
That's it's February. Yeah, I think so. I forget. But and that was cool, because I feel very fortunate to have gone there when I did, because that was the January before Hurricane Katrina. And so I got to see New Orleans before the hurricane happened. And then the January after that, which was the January after Hurricane Katrina, I went there with my friend Jim, my good friend Jim Schiller, and we went to Biloxi, Mississippi, and volunteered for hurricane relief. And in part we were in New Orleans, but we go to New Orleans sometimes just to like go check it out or whatever, or to go eat the good ass food and stuff like that. But we were there for like 4 months, I think. We were there from January to April. So
what did you see?
God, so much crazy shit. I mean, I'll send you. I've got a story that I wrote. I turned it into a horror story. Not that it was a horrible experience. It was crazy though. Like it just felt unreal just going there.
You're talking about the aftermath of Hurricane Katrina?
Katrina, yeah. Oh, were you asking about when I just went there in general? Yeah. Okay, so when I went.
Well, no, I meant actually during when you did the recovery part of it.
Okay.
Yeah.
So I remember, I'll never forget. Jim and I drove there. We took a nice long trip to get there, and kind of a road trip, and saw some friends on the way. Saw Rachel down in LA, and went and saw our friend Mary in Las Vegas, and just whoever we knew, his aunt and uncle, who were so sweet. We stayed with them in Oklahoma City, and they were so cool. Then we went to Austin, and then but I'll never forget, we got into Biloxi. We were staying in Biloxi, Mississippi, and we got into Biloxi at night. It was pretty late, and that was when I first started seeing the effects of the storm, and it like made my stomach drop. Like I just saw seeing sort of just spots where trees were completely laid down, and just like it. And I don't think we went in through, I'm trying to think if we went in through Gulfport. Like Gulfport got hit really bad, so but it was night, so we couldn't really see much. But one memory that really sticks out was there was a series of billboards that somebody had put up, and it said, there was one, and they did like one word at a time, and it said something to the effect of we will get through this together, or something to that effect. And I was like, oh, like, dude, that's so cool. But I also remember being kind of haunted by that, being like, wow, like there's like even before seeing the waking life of Biloxi and Mississippi and stuff, I remember just having the feeling like this is a community that's healing, and it's a fucking gnarly ass wound. Like, and I experienced that. I mean, I'll never forget my first day, but we slept in the loft of the church. We were staying with Hands On USA, this really incredible nonprofit group that's a volunteer group that helps. Now it's Hands On. It's called Hands On Network now, I think, or something to that effect. But
disaster recovery organization.
Yeah, and they had just been in Indonesia after the tsunami hit. I think it was, and right before Hurricane Katrina. But they're doing really cool things, and so we stayed in the church, and we were there to meet some friends of Jim's who had been staying there, and they were still up there staying in their motorhome in the parking lot of the church. And they kind of gave us the digs. They're just kind of saying, yeah, you can wake up and there'll be breakfast for you when we get up, and everyone leaves for work at 8 or whatever. I think it was 8 or 9 maybe. And there'll be sign-up sheets for all the different jobs that you can do, and just sign up for whatever job you want to do. It doesn't matter. Just sign up for anything. Everyone needs help. Everything is just as important as everything else. And make yourselves comfortable. And then they'll have lunches that you can pack, and then we'll be eating dinner tomorrow night, and all that. They'll provide everything you need, and this and that. So Jim and I were just kind of talking, this is crazy. Holy shit, we're here. This is nuts. So we stayed that night in the loft of the church. Some guy was snoring right next to me. It was just a bunch of people laid out, kind of. It felt like summer camp or something. And then the next morning there was somebody up cooking breakfast for everybody, and I just kind of met people would kind of come to me and just kind of be like, oh, hey, my name's so-and-so, what's up? Because I think it was at that point, it was a relatively small gathering of people. And so people mostly whenever somebody new showed up, they're often recognized by the folks who are volunteering there. And I remember just kind of Jim and I had separate. Jim was kind of doing what, like, we had kind of separated and just, we were both just doing our own thing. And I found, because one thing that Garth, Jim's friend, had told us the night before was just that interiors was something that they needed a lot of help on. And that was going into houses that had been flooded in the storm and stripping them, taking everything out of the house and stripping them down to just the bare bones. So
That's
that
really
they,
gross, huh?
it was crazy. It was really interesting. It was actually kind of fun because we could just break shit and just like anything. They would just say, "Oh yeah, that counter, it needs to be smashed and taken out and thrown on the street." I'd be like,
Oh yes.
"Yeah." I'd be like, "Really? Like you want me to do this? Okay, I'll do it." But that was actually really kind of fun. But I remember I got on an interiors crew with the guy. The leader of that crew was Dubes, who I'm friends with to this day, and Jim got on another crew with somebody else. And so I was just kind of there by myself, meeting folks, and met some other people. Suzanne was on that crew, I remember, and Becca was on that crew. Becca. They're really just such amazing people that we ended up all becoming really close, because some of them had been there since within weeks of the storm, some of them within days of the storm. And they would just tell us about how crazy it was. And I remember going to lunch that day, and I think there was maybe another couple in that crew who had just gotten there that day. And Dubes was kind of driving us around, just as we were going to lunch. He drove us by, seeing a couple things of just the magnanimity of the effects of the storm. And one of them was, it was so surreal. We were on the ocean, on the coastal highway, which was about a beach length away from the waters. And then on the other side of the highway was an ocean liner of a ship, and it had been a gambling barge, because before the storm, gambling was illegal in Mississippi, but they'd have barges out in international waters in the Gulf, and a lot of these barges ended up just getting washed up on shore. Crazy. And that was one of them. It was giant. It was probably 60 feet tall and probably 100 yards long. Like, it was giant. And I remember just looking at it, just being fucking so. It gave me such a crazy perspective of just how small we are and how crazy the earth can be. And when we went out to this place that we ended up going out to a lot, almost, I think most days we'd eat lunch at this place that we called the Jetty or something like that. But it was a bridge that crossed part of the Gulf, and the bridge had been in the waves that had come through in Hurricane Katrina. It had been lifted off its stilts, if you will, and moved over probably about 15 feet, and then slammed back on them. And so every part that had landed on one of the stilts had snapped in half. And so it just looked like a set of fallen dominoes just going out into the water, just sort of like sinking into the water. They were just looking at that, just being like, "Holy shit, this is fucking crazy." When we had MRE, we were in Biloxi, where there was a big military, I think it was the Air Force base, and the Air Force was really great, really, really helping out. It's where Biloxi Blues takes place, that really awesome movie, with Matthew Broderick, is it?
Yeah, and Christopher Walken.
Yeah. But the Air Force they gave us a ton of MREs that we could eat, and those were actually pretty good. I remember at first, at least. but they had some pretty good shit in there. And I guess the first MREs actually had, I think they said 3 or 4 Lucky Strike cigarettes in them. I was like, dude, that's so sick. But I smoked back then too, cigs. But yeah, it was a crazy experience.
How did it change you?
It made me feel that all of the all of the troubles that I was having, because I was in a point, I went on that trip because I, again, was in Grass Valley and not really wanting to be living there. I had just moved out of Arcata, where I was living for not very long, but I tried living up there for a little while, and it didn't work out. And so I had to move back to Grass Valley. I wasn't living with my dad. I wasn't living on the ranch again. I don't even know where I was staying at first, probably couch surfing or whatnot. And then I found out that Jim was going, like, some friends kept saying, oh, Jim's going to go out and volunteer for Hurricane Katrina. And I remember thinking that was so fucking cool. And I remember talking to him at that bar that's up from Foggy Mountain Music, that one that's right there, the Nevada Club, or
The Nevada Club.
the Nevada Club. And I was in there with Jim, and I just asked him, I just said, hey, I heard you're driving out to New Orleans, or to the South for Hurricane Katrina. Do you want a companion? Because I need to go anywhere but here. And he just said, dude, I've been asking people to come with me. I would love it if you came. Let's do this. And it was so sick. And he was with his dog, Allie. Oh my God, Allie girl, the best dog ever.
Oh, I like that dog.
She was such a sweet dog. And part pit and wherever we went camping on our way out there, we said she was Rhodesian Ridgeback, because they wouldn't let pits in campsites, even though she was the sweetest dog ever. But so yeah, but okay, so going back, so my experience out there, I remember coming back to Grass Valley and just thinking all my troubles are so fucking nil, and so just kind of, I don't know, they just felt all so first world and so just whatever. Like like I was making kind of mountains out of molehills. And it really helped me kind of just feel a little bit more at peace with where I was at life. And I honestly, I remember when I got, because the reason I had to come back was because I ran out of money. I had zero money. And the group that we were with, because I got a job at a sushi restaurant right down the street from where we were volunteering in Biloxi, because I needed money. And the folks, because at that point it had stopped being Hands On USA and got taken over by Hands On International, I think it was called, which was very different. And they were kind of more corporate-y. And they were involved when MTV came for spring break, came to our spot and fucking blew it out. We were like, fuck you all. Like, we've been here for months and you all suck. But that's a whole nother sidebar. But I forgot where I was going with that.
No, I think you were just, yeah, I think what I think you were saying was basically that you felt like, after seeing all the devastation, that it felt like your problems were not as what they seemed to be.
Yeah, exactly. Oh yeah. And then, and that's what, because I had been working at the sushi restaurant, and then I came home from work one night, and one of the people at this new organization kind of took me aside and just said, hey, are you working somewhere? And I was like, yeah, I'm out of money. And they just said, well, you can't, it's kind of part of our policy. You can't have work. You can't be working while you're working here. And I just thought that was kind of weird, but I guess that, I think they had some kind of, I forget what their reasoning was behind it. And then they offered me a job there, but then that just seemed weird. I don't know. It just seemed really weird. And I just wasn't really down. So I just told them I'd quit that job and just work until I ran out of money, which I did.
Well, we do need to close out. But I do want to, if there's anything that either of you'd like to share before we close out. I mean, of course, we can continue the conversation either on this podcast or our future podcast. So, but I mean, you're fascinating. I love hearing you talk. And but I want to go over a little bit about your what you've written and how people can get your published material.
Yeah. So far, so I've got some stuff online. I've got my website has some links to stuff. My website is Sean M as in Martin Sanford.com. And then I've got links to some stuff there. I have a book I write, short stories for Low Card magazine, and I mean, they involve skateboarding, but I'm kind of more putting skating into my story. I don't know. It's not. I don't know. I feel weird kind of saying that they're skate stories because I feel like that puts them off as something that they're not necessarily, that they're not really like that. But anyway, but that's just my own shit. But I've got a collection of stories and photos that are from Low Card and from and it's called A Man Baby's Requiem. That's available on my website and through Low Card. And that also has a collection of longer form stories, because Low Card is really tiny. It's the size of a zine. And so my stories have to be essentially half a page long or like a paragraph long. They have to be really short. So I have longer form stories that were on a website that it's, God, I feel like an asshole.
Don't feel that way.
It's thank you. But because I'm having trouble remembering the erg, but
I'll tell you what, if you email me the links, I'll put them in the show description, and you know, folks can get to that material through that.
Okay, sweet. Because I even quote the website on the back of my book. But anyway, I have the second part of my collection of short stories is this really great online magazine of fiction that was all short fiction, and I was so stoked to have found out about it right when they were first starting, and so I was able to get in on the ground floor, and I wrote for it the whole time it was around, and they have some really good shit on there, and I have a story and all the things, but and the second half of my Man Baby's Requiem collection of stories is stories from that website.
Now, did you have a website of your own?
Yeah, it's SeanMSanford.com.
All right.
And that has links to all the things.
So everybody, that's Sean M as in Mike's Sanford.com. Rachel, is there anything that you would like to say or share before we close?
This photo before we close.
Yes.
This photo was taken in 91 or 92, I believe. And it was at Kmart. We did this at Kmart. And I have had this photo hanging in my house in every home I've ever lived in my entire adult life because it's funny.
Can you describe it?
Not really. I mean, it's just funny.
Is it very 80s Kmart?
No, like Sean didn't brush his hair. And my sister is like, she's got her tongue kind of hanging out, like she's biting her tongue in some weird way. I look really cute. That's why I like
You do, Rach. You look cute.
Were you wearing your glasses? Or your eyes really owl-like?
Oh no, I was just starting to get into my super gothy stage, so I got short, like a black bob and black eye. My makeup looks great. I got
you look like Morticia Adams.
Yeah, it was a really good one for me, but everybody else looks silly because all of our family photos. So I've always framed it and had it in the house because I think it's funny. Because all of our family photos are more like this. This is a photo of my grandmother and my siblings, and Sean always looks like bummed out, like he's mad that he's there, and then my sister always looks bored, right? So here's another one. This is another good example of Sean looks upset, and then Marnie's like annoyed, and I'm not paying attention because I'm looking.
I remember that. Yeah, we're at the Sacramento Zoo. I remember that.
Zoo. There's not a lot of pictures of us where we're all like face forward and paying attention, and like this was a before school picture. We're all like leaving, like Sean's looking down at the ground like he's falling, and my sister's like, we're leaving. I don't know why. So a lot of our family photos are like that. So I like this Kmart one because we're all at attention. We're all present in the moment. Nobody's crying. Nobody's leaving. So it's like, this is a favorite too. That's all of us as little kids in the horse trough at the ranch. I'm covering naked kids. But
are you bathing in it?
Yeah. We could, because the horses drink out of the creek. They didn't really drink out of the trough. So I'm in some weird sunsuit and I've got the worst 80s haircut ever. And I don't know what Marnie's doing. And Sean's just crying or pissed.
Yeah.
Like he's not happy.
Yep. I used to love swimming in that horse trough. It was awesome.
That horse trough was awesome. I have very vivid memories of your dad soaping up with the Brahmers.
Yeah.
then diving in, and the horses didn't drink out of it, right? So it was, I mean, and we cleaned it all the time. Like that was one of my jobs, just to
Right.
scrub the sides of it with a big brush.
And it was gnarly. Like the cleaning was gnarly.
It was gross because it gets
Yeah.
And for one, for visual reference for anyone who is watching on YouTube, this is the barn of the. So tell me that isn't haunted. I know the glare is really bad on me. That's a haunted barn if I ever saw one.
Is that a
And
black
so-
and white photo?
It's not. It's not black and white, but it's still super creepy. It's hard
Yeah,
to.
the barn is rad. And it's different. Like some people even watching this may, oh yeah, the oak tree. God.
Oak tree.
Some
It's a beautiful place.
some folks maybe even watching this know some people. I know people who've like gone to weddings out there after Susan took it from Marnie and I.
It's been in Martha Stewart wedding. I mean, it's like if you go on Pinterest and Google Squirrel Creek, it's all over. There's like
Ugh.
fancy, I know it's kind of gross.
Ugh.
And it's all fenced off now. It's like, it sucks because it's been turned into a vacation place kind of, or like an Airbnb type place or a wedding place, but it's no longer, come on, everybody, let's go to the ranch. And now it's just like, here's your gate key and money, please. And, and it's just, it took all the current owners have kind of blamed it out. Like it's not the place it used to be. It's like a vacation place now. It's a tourist trap. It's all the love that grandpa put into it and that, was had it be a community place is gone.
Yeah.
Bummer.
It is a bummer.
Bummer, man.
Yep.
So Sean, is there anything that you want to say? Because I mean, of course, we'll continue this either on this podcast or our future podcast, but is there anything that you'd like to share before we close out?
I would like to share that I have the most incredible wife ever, and she's my rock, and she's got me through so much. Like the last few years have been weird, and my wife Candace has been so incredible and just turning me on to music, and we're always doing fun things together. And even we always call it we called it an unamazing race because we'll try to go somewhere and often get on the wrong path and get lost and just take weird routes or just get all weird, but we never mind because we always love just being together. And I don't know, I just want
you can talk a little bit, but talk briefly about how you met and why you fell in love.
We met, I saw her the first time I saw her was at a mutual friend's wedding. She was the MC at the wedding, and I remember just being like, oh my God, like that woman, that's the most beautiful woman I have ever seen. I remember like seriously feeling that way. And then, but she was way out of my league. And like a lot of my friends, like a lot of the friends I knew her, they just be like, oh, Candace, what's up? And I remember thinking, oh, she knows Toad. Oh, and she knows Hustle. And like just some friends. And I was just really curious as to who she was and what her story was. And then fast forward, I don't know, a year, maybe. Yeah, about a year or so. And it was the bride of that wedding. It was her birthday at a bar down the street from our house. And her husband, Nick, he was just saying, oh yeah, you should come to Denise's party. It'll be fun. And so I went and I saw Candace. And I remember just thinking, holy shit, it's the woman from that wedding. Oh my God, I got to try to talk to her. Like, oh my God. And I didn't even really need to try because my boss at the time, Rob at Low Card, who's really good friends with Candace, he told her I'd always make up jokes at work. And Rob always thought that they were so bad, just horrible jokes. And Rob said, hey, tell Candace one of your jokes. She likes dumb shit. She'll think they're funny. and so I told her my joke. What did James Hetfield say when he was getting eaten by Jaws? Sharkness imprisoning me, all that I see, absolute horror.
Oh my God, such a Sean joke.
Yeah, and she thought it was funny, and she laughed. And then she did an impression of Whitney Houston overdosing in the bathtub that I thought was really funny. And we just hit it off, and we just kept kind of joking around all that night. And then some friend, and that was, I mean, long story short, that was it. And the spark was lit, and it has only grown ever since.
That's kind of reminds me of Rachel and I. It was love at first joke.
Yeah.
Yeah. Well, I mean, you made that joke about James Hetfield, and Rachel and I, when we first met, I knew that she had cancer, but I didn't know what type. And so I said, what type of cancer did you have? And I wrote, testicular ? And she wrote at the same time, prostate.
Oh,
I got
birds of a feather.
testicular right before I hit send, and I was like, oh,
Did you do it? Oh, that's amazing.
good one. And we hadn't met yet, so this is by text before we'd actually met in person. So I was like, wow, the balls on this guy. I like it.
So awesome. That rules.
Yes, I do have some huevos.
You get the Betty White vagina to talk to me that way.
All right. So thank you so much, Sean. You are fascinating, and I'm really honored that we had this opportunity to talk. And thank you for sharing what is alive within you.
Yeah,
And
thank you.
you can check out Sean on Sean M as in Mike,
As in Martin.
Sanford.com. What were you going to say, Sean?
No, I said as in Martin, because you keep saying Sean M as in Mike Sanford, but it actually stands for Martin. So
I know, but
funny that you're using a different man name.
I use the Alpha, Bravo, Charlie, Delta. That's and M is Mike. So that's how I do it.
All
That's
right.
fair.
Sorry,
Yeah.
you're the boss.
So thank you so much, Sean. Really, really love you and appreciate you. And Rachel, thank you for
You didn't ask him the question.
for what?
You didn't ask him the question.
Okay. I felt bad because Nicole kind of I thought, well, I thought, well, maybe I shouldn't ask it anymore. But
Did
I don't
Nicole
know.
ruin the question for you?
A little bit, yeah.
Oh.
But I'll
I'm
ask.
curious.
Sean, if you had an omnipotent voice where you could speak to everyone and every creature on this planet in their own language, what would you say?
Jesus. I would say next time you're sad, eat an ice cream cone.
There you go.
Next time you're sad, what?
Eat an ice cream cone.
Fair enough.
Because it
Fair
always
enough.
works for me. And I feel like that's really good therapy. And I feel like that's good, simple advice that could possibly pertain to everyone.
You can't
Eat
get
your
upset if
feelings.
you have an ice cream cone. You can't.
It's true. It's true. Or pizza.
There you go.
Oh, bunga, dude.
So my next question is, what would your epitaph be?
Let's see. It would be here lies Sean. Not always right, but not always wrong. Resting in peace and in macaroni and cheese, likes peas. No, I don't. I like the first thing I said.
It did go off the rails.
We'll
at the
take
end
that
there a little bit. Rachel, I'll ask you as well because you always get upset when I don't ask. So
No, that's not true. Don't. You ask me all the time, and then I have to come up with a different answer every time. Or it's the same. What was my last one? STFU was what I would say to everybody.
I don't remember. We've done it a few times.
Well, that's
so.
what it is now. It's STFU.
That'd be good.
Everybody could shut the fuck up once in a while, and it'd be good.
All right.
Including
Yeah.
myself.
All right. And that's what you would say to everybody?
Yeah.
All right.
Yeah.
That's not bad
Epitaph.
advice.
Epitaph. I don't know. My first thought was that thing that we used to put on the bathroom walls. I was here, but now I'm gone. I left my name to turn you on. I'm not.
That's a good one.
All right. Awkward ending. Here we go. So thank you everybody for watching on YouTube and listening on Apple Podcasts. Please rate, subscribe, and review it. If you like my wife and I being crazy, funny, and exhausting, go to the Exhausting Snyders on TikTok. And please do keep listening and, checking out the Facebook page, Blind Men in Blacks, to see what our new podcast is going to be, because we don't know yet. We're working on it, but we're getting there.
And we don't know what it's going to be called either. And it's not going to be called Laws and Ages.
Loss and aid.
Whatever.
Lost the AIDS. I thought it was gonna be lost the AIDS.
Lost the AIDS.
Lost the age. All right, everybody. Thank you so much. Thank you, Sean Sanford. Thank you, Rachel Snyder. Thank you, everybody, for listening and watching. And now we are going to have our strange and awkward ending of The Blind Man in Black. Here we go.
Awkward ending. It's still recording.